All right, we're going to call to order the December 13th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, Redevelopment, Successor Agency, and Financing Authority. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'd like to invite our guests to join the council and staff in the pledge, which tonight's going to be led by Edwin Amesqua. Edwin? Pledge? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The council did meet in closed session this evening that's all right. To confer with our legal counsel regarding one item of significant exposure to litigation. No action was taken. To confer with our labor negotiator regarding negotiations with the Police Officers Association, the Police Managers Association, and the West Sacramento Firefighters Association Local 522. No action was taken. To confer with our real property negotiator regarding negotiations with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. No action was taken. To confer with our legal counsel regarding one item of existing litigation related to C.C. Myers Liberty Mutual. No action was taken. And to confer with our real property negotiator regarding the parcel on West Capitol Avenue that's identified in the council's written closed session agenda. Cover everything, Mr. City Attorney? Thank you. All right, so with that, we're going to proceed to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, state law precludes the council from having a discussion or taking action on items that are brought up under item 1A, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the council on this or any other agenda item this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and turn it into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use, and that's just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to be heard. And to that end, we ask that all the comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Also in front of the clerk is a flip chart, and that just indicates which agenda item the council is currently considering. The clerk accepts the speaking request yellow cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. Once the staff report is concluded and the council's questions and the public comment have begun, we don't take any additional speaking requests. So if you're here on a specific item and you want to speak to it, certainly try to get your card in as soon as you can, but definitely no later than the conclusion of the staff report. We also know that for some folks, public speaking is a nightmare and gives them hives and makes them queasy and uncomfortable and want to run out of the room screaming. And to make it more comfortable for our neighbors here in the community, we do ask that there not be any boos or catcalls or even applause or other demonstrations, and we just try to maintain a civil discourse here in the community's chambers. So with that, we have just one request to speak under item 1, and it's by Michael Rossler.
Good evening, how are you? Mayor, council members. My name is Mike Rossler, the school administrator for Highlands Community Charter School, and I'm actually here just to introduce our school. We're an independent public charter school that's kind of unique. We serve students 22 years of age and older who do not possess a U.S. high school diploma. We also serve adults who wish to improve their English, an English language development program. We also have career technical education programs at about 20 sites throughout Sacramento County. We've recently moved into the former Holy Cross Elementary School and taken over that site to provide high school diploma, career technical education in the form of early childhood education. We offer free play care, free bus passes for our students. For those folks that may have erred in their ways early on and wish to come back and earn their high school diploma, learn English to better communicate with their kids' teachers, kids' doctors, those things. And also we have some skill training to allow them to walk across that stage with a high school diploma, as well as a livable wage skill that allows them to support their families. And so I'm here to introduce ourselves, Highlands Community Charter School. We're on Todd Hunter at the Holy Cross facility, and we certainly love being in West Sac. It's been very good to us. We have 2 classes for English language in the morning, high school all day, English language at night, and so we're always looking for new students, and there's no charge for any of that. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Can I ask, is it are you chartered by the school district or the county or out of?
No, we're
out of
actually,
district?
we're actually authorized by Twin Rivers Unified School District. Our main campus is right across from Grant High School, and we ventured into West Sac on the request of Sheila Smith with Health and Human Services, Yolo County. And so they do some referring, and we also do outreach to the ethnic churches for our ELD program, and are always looking for folks that are coming back to look for an opportunity to add a high school diploma to their resume.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that's our only request under item 1A, so now we'll proceed to item 1B, which is council communications. Are there any reports or other communications this evening?
I do.
Mr. Ledesma?
A couple of things to report out on. First of all, back on November 30th, there was Mayor Cabaldon and I attended the Streetcar Policy Steering Committee meeting, which took on a different tone and hit a different milestone with that meeting, and that was the actual formation of the Riverfront Joint Powers Agreement, which will be the governing body that will oversee the streetcar project and the operations as that begins to get built out. So months, years of work that has gone into the streetcar program as a project. It's still winding its way through getting the actual project to the point of being built. But today, that meeting was very important because we established a governing body for it. The representatives, there's 4 members of the JPA at the moment, 2 from Sacramento, that's council members Jeff Harris and council members Steve Hansen, and then from West Sacramento, myself and Mayor Cabaldon. And we elected a chair and vice chair. Chair was Mr. Hansen, and the vice chair was Mr. Cabaldon. And we also went through a series of very routine but necessary actions to establish the JPA, how it will be managed, governed, making sure we had our code of ethics in place, and everything else downstream. So that was a good meeting, a great milestone to hit. And in addition, we got updates on the project, and it's continuing, as I said, continuing to make progress, working with the federal government, making sure we hit all the project deadlines as they come up. So that was on the 30th, and I'm sure if there's more, the mayor will add that in his portion. This past Monday was a meeting of the Yolo County Transportation District, and the main issue, item discussed at that point was the countywide transportation capital improvement plan that's being drafted by the district. It was mainly a process-oriented discussion around the next layers of how that plan will be rolled out. It has been, I think, gone in front of the county managers meeting, which includes our city manager, and it will continue to wind its way through there and back to the district for actual deliberation on the content of the plan, which will become very important. I think I brought this up at previous council communications, that in that plan, in addition to articulating the transportation needs and projects that are necessary in the county, it is looking to the board to consider that plan and look to whether or not a sales tax measure should be introduced as part of that. So that will probably be coming together in January. I think the January meeting is when they're targeting to have that, at least part of that discussion on the plan. Whether the sales tax measure is actually broached at that meeting, I'm not quite clear. But again, that's coming. That should be coming together in January, and then probably the months after that. So I know this council will be interested in that, and as that comes forward, I'll make sure everyone's in the loop. So that's all I have for today, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Ms. Orozco?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to report briefly that West Sacramento was highlighted in the news this past Sunday. Channels 40, Channel 31, and Channel 13 highlighted the West Sac Kids Give Back community program, which is citywide. I wanted to make that announcement to invite every member of the community to attend our care package assembly program, which will be this Sunday at 4:30 p.m. at the Collings Teen Center. All children of all ages are welcome, along with their parents. It's an effort to really expand efforts for West Sac children to learn the spirit of service above self during the holidays. Thank you.
And thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Yolo Housing Authority met on December 6th, along with the 10-year Plan Commission. The Yolo Housing meeting consisted mainly of closed session items, a number of real property issues and anticipated litigation. The Homeless 10-year Plan Commission, we also heard a verbal update on the Davis Pathways Project, which is a homeless project being developed in Davis. And today, the Yolo-Solana Air Quality Management District met. We approved the district or the director's contract. We also heard an update to AB 1132, which allows the agency to issue basically restraining orders to gross polluters, and it has a process where you actually have a hearing at a later point. And I was selected as the vice chair of that organization. That's it.
All right, great. Thank you. I have a couple of reports. First, the City School 2x2, our liaison committee with the Board of Trustees for the Washington Unified School District met. We had two principal items on the agenda. One was a briefing on the council's and the city's process and related actions with respect to the cannabis manufacturing, production, research ordinance, and development agreements. That the members of the trustees requested a more in-depth briefing and closer lines of communication as we move forward on the project. And then also more extensively on the Sycamore Trail project. I know council is aware we were, the city was, thanks in large part to the partnership that we have with the school district and the school district's enthusiastic support for the application. We were the top, city manager was telling me not to say this at the beginning, but I think now that it's been around for a while, we were the largest grant winner in California for the urban in the cap and trade category for these kinds of projects to fund the bridge over the Sacramento over the freeway for the Sycamore Trail and ultimately farther south to the high school and to places in Southport at the Barge Canal and what have you. And so that was a huge win, a huge victory, but now we have all the actual work to do along the way in order to deliver the project and to align it with the right alignment inside the neighborhood and the right alignment with respect to the various facilities and uses at the school property as well. So that work is underway at the staff level, and we delved into some of it at the 2x2, but also just to reinforce the ongoing relationship and our joint commitment to the project and to getting it right. So it's a productive meeting. We had the U.S. Mayor's Water Summit in Napa last week. A couple of key items. One was we had a really extensive briefing and discussion around the Napa-Sonoma fire situations and the impact on the water supply facilities, the conveyance facilities, the water tanks, the pump stations, many of the pump stations were completely decimated. And so a lot of unexpected threats to the water supply system in Napa occurred as a result. And so we heard from their emergency services and water folks about lessons that they learned around how to manage that better. And how other cities can avoid some of the challenges that they faced and learn from that as well, both in the construction and the deployment of the facilities, but mainly in the relationship between the water system managers and the rest of the Emergency Operations Center in particular. In addition, we have been involved for now a decade on the federal debate over the definition and the regulations that apply to waters of the United States, or WOTUS. So this is this has been an ongoing issue for almost since the inception of the Clean Water Act. The Clean Water Act restricts activities and discharges and pollution and other sorts of things in waters of the United States. But what exactly that means has been a matter of never-ending debate and discussion, and most and cities have weighed in on this topic with the intent of trying to achieve a narrow definition of waters of the United States, and that's because a decade ago, there was some question. Okay, is a is a tire that has water in it that is adjacent to a wetland, and that wetland is adjacent to a river or to a stream, is the water in the tire a water of the United States and therefore protected under the Clean Water Act, and therefore it has to be swimmable, drinkable, and fishable. And that sounds absurd, but actually there are quite a few issues like that. So cities have largely argued against an overly expansive definition of waters of the United States. I have also, though, been pushing on the other direction at the same time, because too narrow of a definition of waters of the United States from a municipal perspective reduces the reach of the regulatory apparatus to get to pollution upstream of us that affects our drinking water, but also downstream of us. And that means that if you need to, for example, reduce the amount of ammonia in the water, and you can't affect the agricultural discharge that's occurring on a drainage somewhere, but there's ammonia coming out of there, then it means you have to get twice as much ammonia out of the city's discharge. So there are costs. I mean, forget the environmental impacts for just a moment and just think about just the economics of it. There are, it's not so simple as simply cities standing up and saying, hey, don't regulate so much, because not regulating so much, the overall water system has disproportionate impacts on us, because cities, because we need federal permits to get water and to discharge wastewater, we're often seen as deep pockets by the government. So anyway, we have been working. When the Trump administration came into office, they swore that they were going to eliminate the waters of the United States definition that President Obama had put in place. They have not, mostly because they don't have any alternative at the moment. Once they proposed to do that, everyone that had been opposed to the Obama rule now realized that the Obama rule is better than the pre-Obama rule. And so there's a vigorous debate about what that should look like, but it is a very big issue for us, both in terms of our land use and development issues, but also in terms of water quality and the wastewater regulatory environment that we face. So we met with EPA on that topic in Napa, and we're continuing the negotiations around it. We expect to have more in January when we're in Washington, D.C. Also, the last issue at that meeting was there's been the Clean Water Act requires that it doesn't require, it allows EPA in its regulatory regime for wastewater to account for the ability to pay essentially of a local community. The way that EPA has done that is taken a look at median household income to determine whether or not a sewer rate increase, for example, would be unbearable in a community. As EPA decides whether to impose a $50 million wastewater plant improvement on a community or a $500 million plant improvement. But that median income has made it the case that almost no one qualifies for any sort of economic relief. So the mayors have been pushing for a more discrete measure that would account for neighborhood level effects and other things other than just median income that accounts for all parts of a diverse city. The Congress punted on the issue and commissioned a report from the National Association of Public Administration on the topic, and they just came out with their report and presented it at the Mayor's Water Council, which basically backs up our point of view that there ought to be a different metric on this. So our hope is, and maybe in Cap to Cap we'll be taking this issue up in DC ourselves, that we'll be able to secure a metric that more appropriately balances the social justice implications of some of the regulatory requirements with the strict technology-based requirements for wastewater treatment. So, and finally, and I'm sorry, but the longest one, the LAFCO, the Local Agency Formation Commission, met last week. It's one of those years when we're not members of LAFCO. We're represented by the cities of Davis and Winters at the moment, or Davis and Winters is the alternate at the moment, but LAFCO is taking up the municipal service review with respect to reclamation districts throughout Yolo County, building on LAFCO's prior determinations, but also recommendations from the State Flood Board and many others that the Central Valley system of Byzantine system of a whole bunch of reclamation districts wasn't in the best interest of flood protection, flood response, and efficient and effective government. So they took that issue up and have been doing an analysis of the reclamation district environment in each of the major flood basins of Yolo County. including the flood basin, which includes and is comprised entirely of the city of West Sacramento. And they recommend, they had two options that that the staff put forward to LAFCO. One was to have the two active reclamation districts in the city essentially, combine into one, and also take over the area of the city that is not currently in any reclamation district, which is most of Broderick and most of Bright. So that was one option. The second option was that all of those reclamation districts be consolidated either as part of the city government or underneath the city government. Essentially the way that we did with the port of what is now the Port of West Sacramento. So those were the two options before the commission. I think the council is aware that all the reclamation districts, both the reclamation districts in the city strongly oppose that recommendation before LAFCO. I went to the commission meeting to provide some background about our experience, our capacity to be able to do that work, were LAFCO to move in that direction, and also some of the historical and flood and financial reasons why it would make sense, frankly, for the city to take that responsibility. And the commission's asked their staff to come back again at their next meeting, in February, now with a more in-depth analysis of some of the key questions. For example, what would it cost to have the city do it as opposed to the reclamation districts? They can only move forward with a change if it results in either a cost reduction or no substantial increase in costs. Of course, we wouldn't want to proceed with it if it costs more money too. So that's one of the areas of interest. But also the governance equity issues around this. So and just to highlight this, and then I'll be done with it because we have a lot more on this topic to come later. Is because the way a heavy emphasis was placed on the role of WESAFCA in not just levy maintenance, which is the day-to-day job of the reclamation districts, but because we have collectively constructed WESAFCA as the principal entity for the management of our overall flood protection program, that the nexus between flood management as a property owner concern and versus flood protection as a citizen and resident concern has changed dramatically in the last century. So when the reclamation district's sole job was to patrol the levees and make sure that they were protecting the agricultural land behind the levees, a property owner-based system had made a lot more sense than it might make today, when the principal job of the levees is to protect the 55,000 people that live here and the 20,000 people who come here to work and the property as well. Because we're in the weird situation now that because Broderick and Bright don't have a reclamation district, when it comes to WESAFCA, they are disproportionately not represented in WESAFCA. And they have no voice other than through the council's representative, which is only one of the WESAFCA board members. We're also in the odd situation that of the 4 WESAFCA members from reclamation districts, half of them aren't, and alternates, half of them are not residents of the city at all. So some of the governance questions that were less relevant 100 years ago are quite relevant today, given the diversity and the growth in the city. So it will be a complicated issue in terms of the politics and the discussion going forward, but I know we'll be taking a look at that again as it comes closer to the February meeting. LAFCO won't be voting in February just to do it, right? The city, there's a further role for us and for the reclamation districts as it goes forward as well if they decide to proceed. And we have the ability at any time to apply ourselves to proceed as well, but it will start to come to a head more in February. So, all right, item 1C is appointments to boards and commissions, and we've been getting some applications in for the 2 commissions that have vacant seats on them, including the Planning Commission. Not prepared to make permanent appointments this evening, but I would like to nominate as an alternate to the Planning Commission Ryan Michael Harrison. His application is at your desks. Mr. Harrison is an attorney who works with the State Senate. I think he has a letter of recommendation from the Chief Justice of the California Supreme Court in his packet. But so I'm appointing him as an alternate to the commission at this point. I expect to bring forward a more complete set of appointments to both the Planning Commission and for the 1 vacancy on the Environment and Utilities Commission in January or February, but would ask if there's a motion to approve that appointment.
Second.
right, it's been moved and seconded to confirm the appointment of Ryan Harrison as an alternate member of the Planning Commission. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to presentations. The first is item 2, which is consideration of the selection of the mayor pro tem. So this is the annual meeting in which we select the mayor pro tem for the coming, or for now, through the coming year. So I'll open nominations for members of the council for the office of mayor pro tem. Mr. Johannesson, Mayor pro tem Johannesson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Councilmember Ledesma.
Right. Are there any other nominations?
I'll second that nomination.
Any further nominations? All right, then we'll close nominations. And seeing that we only have one nomination, we won't do a roll call vote. All those in favor of approving the appointment of Councilmember Ledesma as Mayor Pro Tem, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And Councilmember Ledesma has been elected. Congratulations. And Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson, thank you so much for your service and leadership during the year. A lot of projects underway and a lot leading so many of the city's key initiatives. And as we've taken on a kind of a national presence in several of these issues, I have been in DC more than I have in the past, and I really appreciate you both stepping up, but also leading in so many of the various ways that the city has really started to stand out, and whether it's technology or age-friendly or really reaching out to the community and helping to connect folks to the work that we're doing here. So thank you. And congratulations, Mr. Ledesma.
Thank you.
Do you have
Thanks,
an
everyone.
inauguration speech you wanted to make? Or?
It's 72 pages long, but I'll skip it tonight.
All right. Okay, that brings us now to item 3, which is consideration of a proclamation to recognize future-ready interns and community partners. The resolution is, the proclamation is before you. Is there a motion?
I'll move the recommended action.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. I'm going to make the presentation in just a moment, but wanted to invite the Executive Director of Future Ready, who I'm going to present the proclamation to in just a moment, to welcome you to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members and friends. My name is Chris Ward, and I serve as Executive Director for Future Ready, which operates as an initiative of the West Sacramento Community Foundation. And as you know, our core task is to help high school kids get college and career ready. We wouldn't have been able to do this without the vision of the council, so we wanted to thank you for your fine work on Measure E. And we wanted to bring some of the summer interns here today so you can see some of the fruits of your investment, who are seated in the first row, as well as to be able to acknowledge our key community partners and our employers and the employees who help make this happen. So with that being said, I will now turn it back over to the council for recognition.
All right, if you just saw that, kids, I'm not drunk. My foot's broken, actually. All right, so I'm really pleased that we are here this evening to make the presentation of this proclamation, because what we are doing tonight is, as Chris said, it's a milestone, the first of many, many milestones to come, but is a powerful milestone of the investment in not just dollars that the community here has been making in this effort, but commitment, heart, folks who from the schools, folks from employers, interns themselves, community residents who have been inspired by it. And we are seeing the results. We'll see some of them tonight, but all around the country, all around America, people are saying, what is going on in that little city in California that we keep hearing about because of this initiative and some of the allied initiatives in the Kids Home Run that no one else in the country has even attempted to do. And there are a lot of folks in the country talking about maybe we should have an internship program for young people in our community. It's really happening in West Sacramento, and it's happening one internship and one intern at a time, but it's happening at scale, and it's thanks to the leadership of so many people and partners that are here in this room, so many that are not here tonight that we want to acknowledge, but then in particular to the students students who stepped up and said, we're ready, we want to show the way, and we also want to make a lifelong a life of success and fulfilling careers, and it all starts with this internship and applying the knowledge and the skills and the competencies that we're learning every day in our classes, that we get a chance to bring them to life. So this past summer, 23 students from the Washington Unified School District in 9 different career pathways took their careers up a notch and into their own hands as Future Ready's interns. These students gained practical skills in ag science, information technology, engineering, video production, maintenance and operations, and culinary arts. They worked on tasks from getting Chromebooks ready for other students, to creating marketing videos, doing GIS analysis, to helping run the entire summer school lunch program. And for their meaningful contributions, we want to recognize our Future Ready interns tonight. And in particular, we also want to give appreciation to our member employers and others who joined the City of West Sacramento in this effort. Also want to thank the West Sacramento Foundation, which is a backbone organization in our community that provides essential support to so many nonprofit groups, big and small, mostly small, in order to give us the civic life and the civic culture and diversity that we love about our community. So thanks to the West Sacramento Foundation. So I'm going to read the proclamation, but I also want to acknowledge and thank, we're going to thank them later as well, but I want to do it personally, the superintendent of the Washington Unified School District and the members of the Board of Trustees of the Washington Unified School District. I think two of whom are here tonight, Sarah Kirby-Gonzalez, the president of the board, and Kobe Pizzotti. Without the top-level leadership of the board and the superintendent, who are inspiring, but also reflecting the commitment of the teachers and the site administrators and the staff and the students, this wouldn't be possible. There's no intern if there's no student. There's no future workforce in our community if there's no students. Our young people can't get great internships if they don't have a great education. If they don't walk into an employer, and employer says, wow, you really know what, you really got skills. So thanks so much to our partners, especially at the school district, for really delivering on the promise of education and for going with us together on this great journey of inventing and iterating to create more and more opportunities for current and future success for our young people. So I'd like to read the proclamation into the record. I'm going to need some glasses. But as I do that, why not ask if I forget, ask the Future Ready interns to come forward and stand with me as we read the proclamation. And Chris, if you would do the same. If our other key community partners, oh, everyone else in the room? Okay. All right. So this is a proclamation of the West Sacramento City Council recognizing Future Ready interns and key community partners. So whereas Future Ready, acting under the guidance of the West Sacramento Community Foundation, helped provide West Sacramento high school students in career technical education pathways with meaningful work-based learning experience in the form of internships during the summer of 2017 as part of the West Sacramento Kids Home Run. And whereas 23 ambitious, capable, and future-minded West Sacramento students completed these internships, gaining skills while making meaningful contributions to their employers. And whereas these opportunities for personal and professional growth would not have existed without these civic-minded employers. The California Fuel Cell Partnership, the Center for Land-Based Learning, Wallace School and Associates, and the Washington Unified School District. And whereas leaders within each employing organization made the decision to make these critical investments in our youth, and further, committed supervisor mentors who devoted their time and tutelage to ensuring each intern had a robust learning experience. And whereas the Washington Unified School District, under the leadership of Superintendent Linda Luna, served as both employer and pivotal partner through Herculean efforts rendered by the Bright Center Director of Career and Technical Education, Renee Collins, and Vice Principal Carrie Korwitz. And whereas expanding the summer internship effort into the summer of 2018 and beyond is crucial to ensuring our youth are college and career ready as possible. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of West Sacramento does hereby recognize and commend the following students for taking a positive step in advancing their careers and contributing to their communities: Edwin Amesqua, Brian Barrera, Ariana Cavett, Jason Claxton, Rebecca Fierros, Leslie Garcia, Paloma Guerra, and if you're here, give us some sign. Not everyone is here. Paloma Guerra, Ismael Herrera, Benjamin Macias, Salman Malagze, Trayvon Martin, Crystal Mejia, Daniel Monteros, Maxim Nesterov, Roman Nesterov, Marabudan Niazi, Haley Ramirez, Morita Semi, Haley Saros, Jagjit Singh, Francisco Ventura, Julian Walker, and Jonna Whipple. And so congratulations to the Future Ready interns, and thank you, and again to our partners. Did you want a picture now?
Can we do photos with everybody when we get done?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, are there any comments from members of the council? Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson, Mr. Johannesson, excuse me.
Thank you, thank you.
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
Well, congratulations to all of you who've completed the program. This is really a great program, and I'm sure you've learned some real-life work skills that are going to be beneficial as you move forward with your lives. And I'd just like to thank some of our community partners that helped along with this, the companies that were involved, that were fully supportive of it. And these folks that were involved with this program are people that we've all seen in the community. They're people that give over and over again. Andy Wallace of Wallace Kuehl, Chris White of the California Fuel Cell Partnership, Mary Kimball of the Center for Land-Based Learning, and of course Supervisor Luna and the Washington School District trustees. So thank all of you for putting this together and creating a really great graduating class, and I wish all the best to you all.
Ms. Sandine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too want to add my congratulations to you and thank you for being part of the program. I also want to take a moment and really thank the Washington Unified School District. Thank you, Superintendent Luna. I know you have a stellar team in place and we value your partnership a great deal. You're also one of our large employers as well here in the city. And so in the partnership, and oops, don't turn off yet.
It's even worse.
I didn't even know those were back there, okay. There we go. So I also, and Yorgos, thank you so much for getting the message out for us that you do such great messaging for the school district that we all know what's going on. I'm grateful to you. I also know, and it was mentioned in the proclamation, Renee Collins and Carrie Kerwitz have been instrumental in helping us work through the administrative details of the efforts. And I wanted to call out those efforts because the vision and the tenacity in helping us build a solid foundation are super valuable to get this kind of program off the ground. So we're the city, we're really grateful and really happy for this partnership.
Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, congratulations to the interns. Terrific representation we have, and great work by you on through the program. So congratulations on completing the program. And as the mayor and everybody else has said already, the program could not happen without support from our private sector participating companies in this. And we acknowledge some of the folks that are in the room, the companies in our community who have helped. But even within those companies, it takes one person to sort of act as the supervisor and mentor for these folks. I think some of us that are in the working world know that you have a day job and you have your own responsibilities, and it is a tremendous responsibility to take on as supervisor or mentor to these students. So I want to acknowledge some of the folks. I'm not sure, do we have some of them in the room? We do? So, okay, so I'm going to ask them to stand up because they deserve applause for helping these folks. Is Rick Ochoa from Wallace Kuehl? And then there's Rich, there he is. Ben Zhang from the California Fuel Cell, there he is. From the Yolo County Offices of Education, Karen Swan, Andy Codd, and Maria Perez. Thank you. And from Washington Unified, we had a few. So Gary Pina, Kim Raybold, Candace Ritter, Jonathan Barca, Aaron Smart, Terry Souza, and Daniel Gandera. Are they in the room today? But we'll give them a round of applause anyway. So thank you. So thank you all very much for taking the time with these young adults and helping them get acclimated to their roles in your company. And your service is really something that should be admired to the other private companies. We're going to have another class, and hopefully you got something out of it, and you could pass it on to the future employers of the next class of interns. So thank you.
Ms. Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd really like to echo the thanks on behalf of my colleagues for all the partners here in the room. I know that career technical education teachers are now teaching soft skills to students, and I can't underscore how important that is as a regular portion of their coursework, because we are sending our students out there to be our next generation of leaders, and they can only do so by having those skills and being able to effectively navigate their environments. So it's an incredible benefit to our students, and I know so many of our employers do cite the soft skill gaps that are missing, that exist, and I'm glad that we're attacking that head on. These efforts will ensure that these students' technical know-how is paired with the practical know-how. So I didn't want to neglect to mention that. But moreover, I'm just really enthusiastic about the partnerships. We can't do this alone. You know, we have motivated students here, employers that are willing to offer opportunities to them. And then the motivated and interested and engaged teachers who really want to help these kids travel the journey towards success. So kudos to everyone, and thank you so much for everybody who is here supporting our Future Ready interns tonight. It is because of community coming together that we're able to do such a fantastic job with this. And thank you, Mr. Warden, for bringing the interns to us tonight.
Yeah, we're just about the year now where the very first class of preschool graduates from up for West Sac, that the partnership between the city and the school district and the county and First Five that launched 13 years ago or 12 years ago, they're now ready for internships and for high school graduation. And that was one of the very first deep programmatic partnerships that the city and the school district had together. And it won award after award, and it inspired many other cities and school districts to do similar, to try to do similar work. But that success together that we had then led to this program. And when we first launched it, in addition to all the folks we've thanked in the room, when we first had the idea, it was Wells Fargo and the U.S. Conference of Mayors that gave us a $250,000 grant to give it a try. And that's how we got started with this. And it was the very first class of Future Ready interns and their success. And also the public sector ones inside City Hall, the summer steps interns that became the steps steps interns more broadly. The city is one of the largest internship providers for its young people in all of California. And the two together laid the groundwork, along with the preschool program, for Measure E and for the home run, the West Sacramento home run, which is preschool, college savings accounts, paid internships, digital badges of skills, free community college for every high school graduate in the city, as well as scholarships in college and university for students based on their digital badges and accomplishments that will be coming in a few years from now. That was the most expansive, ambitious education initiative in the whole country, and the voters here did that. Since that time, the Federal Reserve Board, the folks who actually literally print money, and so many others around the country have said that thing, how is that happening? We don't know how it's happening in West Sacramento. It's incredible that a small city is doing that, but it's won so many awards already, and it just began. And it's because of exactly this. It is when people come together from employers and the school school district, in the city, and young people themselves, and say, you know what, this breaks all the rules, or we don't know how to do this, but we'll figure it out, because it's worth doing, because we believe in our community, we believe in our young people, we believe in the community's future. So thank you again to the interns, and thanks to all the partners and to in the school district and in the employer community for making this a reality and making it a success. Thank you so much. Thanks, Chris.
In the spirit of our teamwork, would it be okay to get photos of council members with our community partners?
Oh, no, we won't take pictures. No, we can't, So we'll do.
If you got a shout out tonight, you're part of the second round, maybe I'll forward a photo of council members.
Stay here or go down?
He wants us to come down. I don't. You want us,
Can we just stand back there?
Chris, do you want us to come down?
Yeah, if you, which I think probably elevated would be okay. We got a lot of folks in this photo, but we got a lot of effort. So.
Just can't get too close to you. Hey, Coach.
See, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, definitely that. Let's put the interns in front. Can you guys come and form a row in front of them? Yeah, we'll weave. We'll make it like bowling photo. We can get this done, I'm confident.
No, they're taller than us.
Yeah, just go in between. Find a gap in between these two.
They have a wall in front of you.
Actually, we do have a lot of tall people. 2, and then 3. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. All right, we're now going to proceed to the consent agenda. And for those who have very good manners and can't decide whether it's appropriate to get up and walk out on us while we're going to the consent agenda, it absolutely is. Most of us would do the same thing if we hadn't taken an oath of office to serve. So thanks for joining us this evening. So we're going to move to the consent agenda, which is items 4 through 20. Are there any items I can consent to remove, or any item for separate question or comment? Tim. Okay, I'm going to pull 4, 5, and 6. And so it's 4, 5, 6, and 10. All right, so let's go to 10 first, which is consideration of facilities license agreement for the attachment of wireless equipment on city-owned streetlight and traffic signal poles with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC. Mr. Johannesson.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, Mark, I think this is just really a comment. I think this is going to be a really great opportunity for West Sacramento. In this particular case, we're looking at just dealing with the congestion in certain areas. But this type of system, I think, I'm really looking forward to the implementation and how smooth it goes, because this type of microcell distribution, I think it'd be perfect for Brighton, Broderick, and some of the areas where we have serious infrastructure problems in getting broadband in. It's just not feasible to hardwire in the ground. So I'm really looking forward to this. I'm glad staff has been able to put this thing forward, and looking forward to getting 5G in here.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. All right, items 4, 5, and 6 are consideration of the annual report regarding development impact fees for fiscal year 2016-17, consideration of annual report regarding community facilities district special taxes, and consideration of approval of new classification descriptions, update to existing classification descriptions, and amendments to the authorized position list. And so I pulled these. These are Phil Wright's very last agenda items. So I didn't mean to scare any of your staff, but these are your last agenda items, and they deserve to, we deserve to stop on them for a moment and not simply pass by what is an important moment in the history of the city, and I know also for you personally. So,
Thank you. May I make
so
a
if you
couple
could,
comments?
if you could provide some background, we're going to make you work. maybe some alternatives.
Not on the subject matter. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council, and as you mentioned, this is my last council meeting. after 10 and a half years as an employee and pretty close to 30 years being associated with the city. So I just want to take this opportunity to thank a number of people publicly. First and foremost, I want to thank the citizens of West Sacramento for giving me the privilege of serving them. And every day when I drive to work, I try to remind myself that that's why I come to work, which is to serve the citizens, and I try to remind my employees of that often. Second, I want to thank this council and all the council members I've had the opportunity to work with over the years for everything you do for the city through your dedication and your commitment. Third, I want to thank my bosses over the years, Joe Gaden, Toby Ross, Marty Tuttle, and of course Carol Richardson, who recruited me away from Rockland 11 years ago for their support and leadership over the years. Fourth, I want to thank all my fellow department directors, past and present, who I've had the honor to work with over the years. And as I call myself, I'm their assistant coach, and it's been a privilege to be their assistant coach. Fifth, as all of you know, for most of my career, I've been the city's chief negotiator and during some very difficult financial times. And I want to thank all of the unions and their leadership for making those difficult negotiations never personal, and just knowing that we were trying to do the best for the city. Sixth, I want to thank all of the employees of the city of West Sacramento. We're really fortunate that we simply have the best municipal employees that I've ever had the privilege to work with. They're smart, they're hardworking, they're dedicated, and they're compassionate about what they do. Excuse me. And it's been my honor to call them my coworkers. Finally, I want to thank the members of my team in Human Resources, Finance, and IT who are part of this tremendous staff. And in particular, they're really the reason that I've been successful in my job. I've gotten a lot of credit over the years, and really, in all honesty, the credit belongs to them. So I want to thank everybody who has given me this opportunity. I will be watching with great pride as a retiree of the city, as the city continues to grow and prosper because of all of you. So thank you.
Ms. Sandine?
Oh, yeah, I'm actually really glad you pulled these three items. Mr. Mayor, I want to thank Mr. Wright. Your dedication, your enthusiasm, your creativity have meant so much to the city. And I personally have enjoyed your humor and your wit, and the twinkle in your eye as we're kind of, I think when I was getting onboarded as a new council member, you really helped me learn so much about how, municipal finance and a lot of things that I thought I knew something about, but I knew I could learn a lot more from you. You're leaving a great legacy here, and the things, how you described our amazing city staff really emanates from how you are, and I think that's reflected back. So I just look forward to what you're doing next. It's been really wonderful to work with you. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
Thank you, Phil. It's been a real pleasure to work with you for the past few years. You are indeed leaving behind a very big legacy and a standard for the rest of the team to live up to going forward. And even ourselves, myself, you left that standard with me as well. You have a great passion for this city, and it's hard to convey to the rest of the citizens of West Sacramento. I think you nailed it. There's a tremendous amount of smarts and very bright, passionate people in this building that work for them every day. And you are a great example of that. And it's hard to convey to them the passion you bring to sometimes very sobering issues you brought to us. But you always did it with kindness. You always did it with a great deal of humanity. So we understood it, and you took our time with us so we can clearly get the picture. So I appreciated that. I appreciated your openness back for feedback, and you always managed to help us out. So thank you. I wish you the best in your next endeavor as well. So thanks, Phil.
Mr. Johannesson.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Phil, the best of luck to you, and it was really great working with you, both in terms of finance and the labor negotiations. And really, he has the most exquisite handwritten, complicated charts. Absolutely beautiful. But I think I was here when Lee Kiker was here, and it was, I mean, quite a bit of difference between how both of you approach this, but I've always felt very confident in how you were handling things. I appreciated your conservative view on finance and really looking out for the city. In whatever you're doing, either labor negotiations or preparing your financial reports, or even coming with some suggestions. And lastly, I'm really jealous about what your future holds for you. The startup work that looks like you're going to pursue. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity, and I wish you really all the best in that endeavor.
Mr. Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got 3 words when I was looking to join my colleagues here on the dais. And those 3 words came from the great Bill Christoph when I sat down with him and asked him, do you have any advice? And he said, yeah, I have 3 words for you. Meet Phil Wright. And that just goes to show that your wisdom, knowledge, and enthusiasm for the work you do transcends several generations of council members. I'm kind of mad too, because I just got here. And I've been really grateful for your guidance and all of the wonderful lessons you've taught me and my colleagues over the last year. So, best. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Phil's been a great advisor and friend for all of us, so I speak for both Toby and Joe as well.
What about Carol?
And Carol, we're going to add Carol in there as well. When you have an issue, you get that legal mind, you get that fiscal mind, but you really get somebody that's got a great heart. So we had great discussions. We didn't always agree, but we had great discussions, and I know the executive team's going to miss Phil a lot. We joke with him a lot, but we love him a lot too.
Yeah, it would surprise me. It would probably surprise most people that our most emotional department director is our director of administrative services. The area that you would think would inspire the least amount of passion and occasional, almost tears and laughter and hugs, but it has. Phil has I've never seen anyone inhabit this position or a position like it with so much feeling, just really committed to the work and to the people and to professional integrity and to growth. And that's definitely infected all the department directors, but the entire team, and has brought a level of humanity to the work that, given a hard-charging city manager and a city council that has 5,000 priorities to accomplish and $4,000 with which to pay for $5,000 worth of accomplishments, and a team of people in the organization that we've been through so much together, through recessions that never seem to end, through fiscal challenges that never seem to end, and without a human being leading the finance and human resources work. I wonder if we would be waking up each morning with the sense of hope and optimism that we do. So Phil's been great on the substance. I mean, even at the beginning when I thought, you don't know anything about finance, who are you? But Phil learned quick, and most importantly, he knew and recruited and supported some really excellent people all around him in finance and in human resources, and unleashed them and gave them voice and power, and that has shown through in so many things that we've done. So I really concur with all the comments that have been made, and Phil, thank you so much for your undying dedication to the community and to the city and to your colleagues, and on behalf of all of us, best wishes and best luck. I'm still voting no on those items, though. All right. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda? And if not, is there a motion? It's been moved by Mr. Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Roscoe. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. That brings us to our time-set agenda, item 21, which is a public hearing regarding an appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of a conditional use permit for transitional kindergarten through 8th grade public charter school at 841 Bright Avenue, 1444 Hobson Avenue. This is a appellate hearing for which we have a specific set of rules that apply just to these kinds of agenda items. So I'll read those into the record. So the Municipal Code Section 1.08.060 established appeal hearing procedures and required development of a policy for those procedures. That policy, 3A3, requires that the mayor read the summary of the procedures into the record, and these are those procedures. First, I will open the public hearing. Then we will ask members of the council to publicly announce any testimony or evidence received outside of the hearing process, which we refer to as ex parte communications. Next, we'll ask each council member to announce any conflicts of financial interest with a material effect, and any member with such a conflict will disqualify him or herself. Next, we will specify the time that the appellant and the applicant have for their presentations. And for tonight's hearing, we will be providing 15 minutes for the opening presentations and presentations, and 10 minutes for the response period, which we'll cover in just a moment. Following that, the appellant will present testimony first and relevant evidence. Evidence is considered relevant if it proves or disproves a material fact in dispute. And as I noted earlier, that will be a 15-minute presentation by the appellant. Next, the applicant will present testimony and relevant evidence. And again, evidence is relevant if it proves or disproves a material fact in dispute. Following that testimony, members of the public will be given opportunity to present testimony, and public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. And we do ask that folks who are associated with the applicant or the appellant, that they not also participate in the public testimony. If you choose to do so, that is your right to do so. But we do ask that the entire presentations by the applicants and by the appellants be done in their sections, not as part of the public testimony. Then number 7, the appellant and the applicant will each have an opportunity to respond to testimony or evidence that's been introduced by either the other side or by in the public hearing, public testimony. But in the response period, you may not introduce any new testimony or evidence or restate the direct testimony that you provided earlier, so solely for the purpose of responding to issues and evidence that were provided in the hearing. Then we will close or continue the hearing at the council's option. If the hearing is closed, the council will deliberate on the matter and adopt findings if appropriate. The final decision may be deferred for preparation of draft findings consistent with the preliminary decision if that is the council's order. So with that, if there are any questions on the procedure. Okay, we're in the middle of this hearing, so we're going to return to the consent agenda after this, because we had requests to speak on 3 items on the consent agenda, which were farther in, but we will return to those as well. Unless, Mr. Attorney, do you see a problem with me suspending the hearing? I mean, we haven't opened the public hearing yet.
I think you could do that now.
Okay, so why don't we do that, because there's only a handful of folks to testify on items that were on the consent agenda, and that will permit them to be heard without having to sit and wait through the entire, what could be a fairly long public hearing that we have before us this evening. All right, so I apologize, I put them in the agenda item itself. So these are, so we're going to, without objection, we'll rescind the vote on the consent agenda. Without objection, we'll rescind the vote on the consent agenda so that the items are properly before us. We're going to take up, I think, we'll take up together items 11, 12, and 13. Item 11 is consideration of second reading and adoption of ordinance 17-19, approving the development agreement with Gold Mountain Distribution at 3939 West Capitol Avenue, Suite C, for wholesale cannabis logistics, distribution, and transportation. Item 12 is consideration of second reading and adoption of ordinances 17-20, 21, and 22, approving development agreements between the city and EH Tech pertaining to wholesale cannabis logistics, distribution, transportation, cannabis indoor commercial cultivation, and cannabis manufacturing at 2424 Del Monte. And item 13 is consideration of second reading and adoption of ordinance 17-23, 24, and 25, approving development agreements with Sierra Gold Extracts for wholesale cannabis logistics, distribution, transportation, cannabis manufacturing, and cannabis indoor commercial cultivation at 3970 Commerce Drive. All right, so those are the items that are before us. We'll proceed to the public comment on those items, and the first is by Fang Wu. Fang will be followed by Zhen Dai.
Actually, to save everybody's time, I'm just going to speak for all three. And I'm here actually representing about 20 folks who come here in the first hearing and can speak at the, I'm very thankful, I need to first say, for the council member last time to allow us to talk and listen to our comments and also share with us our opinion. Really take time to explain your stance and why. So I want to say thank you very much all. But I still come here to restate our disagreement or say objection to the three proposed development because we feel that we are not convinced that this establishment will benefit our community in the long run, especially given the nature of this being a new business, in particularly indoor cultivation. We think there's lack of impact and assessment on environment, on energy use, and on community safety and transportation. So with that said, simply saying that, for instance, SQL analysis can be waived, we don't think that's an acceptable answer. So we are concerned that this will bring huge uncertainty in the community, and we urge the city to reconsider this item and postpone the decision until necessary assessment has been performed. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hello.
Welcome.
First of all, when I look at the schedule, the tight schedule for December and January, this is the first time I see the public hearing schedule. I'm very impressed. I said, wow, they are working so hard. I just talked to her. You guys are working so hard. Almost a lot of nights are spent for the community and for the services, for the residents here. Out of that first time public hearing, I think I continue to be a little sad and a little disappointed and puzzled and disturbed still. With the decision, first of all, I think the decision was made, from what I hear, that I feel like the decision was made after a long process of being educated. So it's not intuitively or by instinct, it's the right decision to make, how to deploy this in this nice city. And secondly, I think I keep hearing that, okay, we build this, we approve this, or we plan this based on the ground that 60% something population approved for cannabis legalization. But to my in my eye, this the approval of or legalization of cannabis is different from their what can I say? The approval of having this kind of thing so close to our schools, to our residence areas. So there are two different concepts to me. So that's the part I'm still confused and not disturbed. And so that ground is not, okay, the statement last time when I hear all those things is not out of confidence or very sound. So I hope I can get this over, but I don't know how. So the best thing is I wish we do not have this around us, so we can still as happily living here as ever. Thank you for your time, and have a nice evening.
All right, thank you very much. I think those, Madam Clerk, are those the only requests? Okay. All right, so before we return to the consent agenda, I wasn't here at the last meeting, so I thought I might just say a word about this. I am supportive of both of the items. And I watched the hearings and the reasons that were articulated by the members of the council at that time. I share, we are an industrial city. We have been an industrial city for over a century. For most of for 20 years, I lived right next to what is currently Westmore Oaks Elementary School. Which for most of the city's history was one of the elite areas. The Westmore Oaks area is one of the elite neighborhoods of the city, but directly adjacent to one of the heavy industrial areas of the city as well, and to the port. It's been in the DNA of the West Sacramento community, and it's helped to contribute to the economic diversity and the resilience of the city to have a well-regulated but vibrant industrial sector. That unlike Rockland or an Elk Grove or other communities in the region, it's been important to the city to have a diversity of jobs and of employment opportunities in the community. In the same way that when we provide zoning for a restaurant, and then we might hope that I don't know, pick a restaurant. We might hope that a Luca's moves into a restaurant building, but instead Burger King moves in. We don't have the authority to decide yes Luca, no Burger King, or no Burger King but yes Kentucky Fried Chicken. That is not within the authority of the city. The city doesn't, for good reason. In fact, it's only under authoritarian regimes does the government have the ability to make that level of decision. And the same thing is true in our industrial facilities. When we zone for a set of industrial activities that are likely to have a similar sort of effect, have to be treated equivalently. We can't each time say, well, it's okay to store bricks here, but it's not okay to store cement blocks here. We don't have that kind of authority. And so the test of our zoning code is really, is the code and our rules and regulations provide adequate public safety and protections for the adjacent neighborhoods where there are neighborhoods. And most of the facilities that are covered by the cannabis policies are not anywhere near residential neighborhoods. But no industrial use is allowed to produce any kind of odors, period. Doesn't matter whether it's a chocolate factory or a cannabis manufacturing facility. In neither case, if odors are detected, then that they are in violation of the law, and that law will be enforced. They must be protected against robberies and other sorts of events, whether they are a high-value diamond storage operation, which we have had in the city before, or they are a high-value cannabis operation. The test is the same, regardless of what the product is. If it's flammable ammonia that's being produced in the city, or if it's flammable cannabis or flammable wood carving blocks for the kitchen, all of them have to meet the same test of fire safety. So the role of the city council is not to decide each individual use in that way. And our CEQA obligations are not to do a CEQA analysis on every single different thing, but to have those rules appropriately drawn up. So the cannabis regulations are for that purpose, to figure out what is the right like land uses for cannabis manufacturing and research and logistics, and then to provide that appropriate level of protections. And in fact, we've gone much farther with cannabis than any similarly situated product because it is new. And so we want to make sure that we're erring on the side of safety and protection. And so we have, there's no jurisdiction that has stronger regulations in terms of protecting any potential negative consequences from these facilities, but we also have the full right to shut them down if they don't comply or if they don't meet the tests of public safety that we've promulgated. So I'm supportive of it. I know the concerns are they have been heard, and in fact they've been heard in the council, in City Hall, many by our own team members and staff members and council members as well. So your voices and your objections have definitely been part of the consideration of this process for the last year and a half that we've been undertaking them. But I think ultimately we've determined, based on the analysis and the evidence and the science and our own record so far with these facilities through the police department and fire department, that this is an appropriate action to take. So I'm supportive of it. All right, so with that, we have the consent agenda for us de novo. So is there a motion on the consent items now?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Now, I apologize to everyone for the mix-up. So we're going to return now to the hearing with respect to item 2021. The public charter school at 841 Bright Avenue project. So we'll now open the public hearing on item 21 and ask any member of the council, if any member of the council has a received testimony or evidence outside of the hearing process to announce.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think it's
Ms. Roscoe?
testimony or evidence. However, to be conservative in the interest of full disclosure, I have opportunities on a regular basis to correspond with members of my Rotary Club, including Superintendent Steve Lewis, and in August of 2017, to provide further direction as to how Mr. Lewis could continue with communicating with city staff regarding a portable issue that had to do with the existing lighthouse facility on 15th Street. There was nothing substantive with respect to that, but rather just procedural direction. And likewise, in November of 2017, with respect to this particular appeal hearing, Mr. Lewis had a question as to how procedurally these types of hearings were to occur. There was nothing substantive or factual discussed at that time, and I had not yet at the time received a staff report related to anything substantive or factual.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma.
Thank you. I just wanted to disclose, I did have a brief conversation today with city staff to ask a few questions on this item with our city planner, David Tilley.
Ms. Andy?
Yeah, and, Mr. Cabaldon, Mayor Cabaldon, I don't know if this is substantive, but I did attend a public celebration or outreach event at the site several months ago, before this was before us. That's it, thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, then, with that, we'll next ask if any members of the council have any conflicts of financial interest with the material effect. All right, seeing none, then we will, we've already specified the time limits, 15 minutes again for the opening and 10 minutes for each of the two closings. So now we'll move forward with the presentation of testimony and relevant evidence by the appellant. So if Ms. Perez, if you would come forward, then we'll proceed with this portion of the hearing, and you have 15 minutes. And you know where that button is.
I do know where the button is, yes, I do. And I will not take the full 15 minutes. This is going to be pretty brief. Good evening, Mayor Cabaldon and City Council members. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss this appeal with you. I believe all of you know how much I love our city and how committed I am to the betterment of it. While I do not have any concerns about Lighthouse Charter School or its program or curriculum, I am deeply concerned about their location. I would be concerned even if it wasn't being located directly behind my residence. I don't feel the location is ideal, but I do understand that overall it will benefit my community. I'm concerned that the location will have an adverse effect on our property values and our daily lives. My neighbors and I have pretty much resolved ourselves to the idea that the school is going to be built behind us. We don't feel it is, again, an ideal location, and went to the Planning Commission to voice our very real and what we felt were justified concerns. If you feel that the project does not meet the CUP guidelines, I would like you to listen to one last concern of ours, and that's the proximity to our property line. So there's just a few, we're actually on the southern border or on the northern part of Hobson Avenue. There's probably 8 properties, 8 houses that border that area. There will be a road put up directly behind our backyards, and this will serve as their drop-off and staging area. This will bring increased noise and pollution to our homes from the staged cars. I've talked with my neighbors, and we feel that an 8-foot sound wall is not an unreasonable request. The staff report does say that the play area where the basketball courts are, could generate noise in excess of city noise standards as listed in the general plan, and suggests a 6-foot masonry wall, but just in the area adjacent to the basketball courts. This works out nicely for my house and my parents' house, because that would be directly on the other side of the basketball courts. But for the rest of my neighbors, they'll have to deal with the increased noise, traffic noise and smell of car exhaust that will be stacked up waiting to drop off or pick up their child. The report does not mention the noise generated from the car staging area. It just mentioned the noise from the playground. Anyone who has ever picked up or dropped off a child at a school knows firsthand the kind of noise that this involves. I was very surprised with the planning staff that this wasn't addressed in the report. And I haven't even mentioned the parking disaster my neighborhood will face when their events will happen in the evening hours or on the weekends at the school. The report did mention that they had just planned, I believe, 12 events throughout the year. So it was nice that the report did mention, and the school is letting the neighbors know in advance how many events to expect. I don't feel that finding 3 in the staff report has been met. If the build out of the school is to be up to 600 students, at least 300, I'm estimating, at least 300 cars entering and exiting the school every morning and afternoon, we will need a sound wall that will accommodate the increased noise that will be imposed on us. There isn't another school in West Sacramento that is located this close to residential homes. Every school in the Washington Unified School District does have a green zone or a play area that buffers residential homes and the school. And I believe that that's, I'm assuming that that was a planned event so that it doesn't impose on the residents. Unfortunately, the way that the Lighthouse Charter has, how much space that they have to work with, it doesn't allow for this type of buffer zone. Superintendent Lewis has reached out to me and has been open to listening to my concerns. I've met with him, and he has offered to talk to us about the kind of wall that would best fit our needs and concerns. But I decided to bring forth this appeal because I feel that my request with the sound wall really needs the backing of the city council in order to make sure that our reasonable request will get addressed and implemented in the final plans. In closing, I would like to say again, I have nothing against Lighthouse Charter. I've come to respect River Charter Schools and the education that they provide to our youth, both in West Sacramento and in Clarksburg. But I also have to protect our property values and properly address the inconvenience that the school location will add to our daily lives. I respectfully ask that you grant my request of an 8-foot sound wall so we can live in relative harmony with our new neighbors. Thank you. That's what I have.
Okay. Are there questions for the appellant? Ms. Roscoe?
Yes. Thank you so much for your presentation, Ms. Perez. Have you had the opportunity to visit the existing location of Lighthouse Charter School over on 15th and Park
Yes.
for an extended period of time?
I've watched the comings and goings just for the morning drop-off and
At what location? Was it the Presbyterian Church or was it the?
Presbyterian Church, yes.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to visit the Baptist Church location at any point?
No, I didn't realize that they occupied both locations at the time.
Okay. And what hours did you have an opportunity to visit
The
school?
morning pickup and drop-off.
Okay. And what was your impression of the amount of traffic that was in the area at the time of the drop-off?
I thought it was pretty full. There was, I have a friend that used to live directly across the street from the driveway into the Presbyterian Church. And I was impressed with the fact that they had the monitors and the cones set out to direct traffic. So I was impressed by that, yes.
How about the noise level? Did you have any particular impression as to the noise level at drop-off?
The noise level, no, but the traffic for the backup on the streets, I was a little concerned.
What concerned you about the backup?
Just that it blocked the houses that are directly adjacent to the school. But the setup was a little different than what's going to be going up with us.
I see. Did you have an opportunity to canvass or speak with any of the neighbors that are either near the Baptist Church or the Presbyterian Church in the existing location?
So not the Baptist Church, because I did not know about the location, but I did talk to a couple of the neighbors. There's a a duplex on the corner of, directly across from the church, on the corner of Park and, it's not 15th anymore, is that West Acre, I guess?
Yeah.
So I did talk with those neighbors, and they were, one was already out going to work, so didn't really impose on him. He didn't feel that there was an issue. But the other two were concerned that it does take a few minutes for them to back out, and that they had to back their cars in instead of normal pull-in. So, yeah. But like I said, I just spoke with a few of the neighbors, neighbors of a friend that used to live there.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm trying to, the specific request on the appeal is, in the written document, you noted that I think that parking and traffic weren't sufficiently addressed, and that you would propose the sound wall, and the commission hadn't incorporated that. Are you objecting to the project, and if it was built, you would want the sound wall, or are you
Correct.
down, or is, okay.
Right, if it was built, we would request the sound wall. I don't feel that the commission sufficiently addressed the sound wall issue when myself and a couple of the other neighbors brought it up. When they did discuss, after they closed the public hearing, then they did discuss what kind of wall should be put up. I believe what was read into the record was a wall with sound dampening features, and I was very concerned about that because I really don't know what that is. So that is why I'm requesting a sound wall, because a concrete sound wall, I know what that is. So I didn't want to leave it up to that vague description, or description that I understand. And also, Mr. Tilley did mention, when they were discussing it, he mentioned wood, and so I do not want a wooden wall put up, and that was another concern of mine. So that's why I'm here.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma?
I don't have any,
Okay.
I don't have any questions at this time. Thanks, John.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll hear from the applicant. Again, the applicant has 15 minutes to present testimony and relevant evidence.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'd like to use a slideshow to kind of talk about kind of the procedure and the process of where we are today, and then my CBO, Peter Stone, will be closing that off as well at the end of this. I first want to say I think I need to go to more of our council meetings, because the energy and the excitement that you all demonstrate as leaders for change is something that resonates very well with me. If we look at the first slide, I want to direct the first slide is a picture of President Robert Nelson, Dr. Nelson, and the new dean at Sac State, Sasha Storican. And one of the things that I was immediately drawn to in the excitement of what's happening in West Sacramento is the opportunities to truly be incubators for change. If we look at the original goals of charters when they began, it was to be incubators for change and educate and engage students and families in a very non-traditional way. That has been sort of our goal at River Charter Schools. This is my 8th year as superintendent. We have obviously 2 schools. Our first school is in its 11th year. It's Delta Elementary Charter in Clarksburg, and our second school now, Lighthouse, is in its 3rd year. And we value art and music and project-based learning. We made that our focus. We wanted to look at very important ways to engage our kids. We're going to utilize, and we are utilizing, our West Sacramento community and our surrounding community. Some of the people that are here today to speak a little bit later is a representative from the university that's going to give us a little opportunity to hear a bit of that, if that's the right time for this, or if that should be part of my presentation. I'll get clarification at the end of this. But I want this council and the mayor to understand that our commitment to the city and to the Broderick Bright community is something I take very seriously. If we look at the next slide, our commitment to this neighborhood is extremely important. I had a wonderful opportunity this week to meet with Jennifer Perez and hear her concerns. I take those concerns very seriously. If I'm going to talk about collaboration, I want to walk that walk, and I want to hear what's going on in this community. And over the past 2 years, I've been able to canvass our current neighborhoods of where we are in our Trinity and Baptist location. And then in the last 3 months, I've put up there what I've done in a 5-day canvassing effort. So this was probably the most exciting 5 days I've had as a superintendent. I was able to just canvass 103 homes. I originally wanted to speak directly to those 26 people on that petition. I wanted to first educate and understand how could we do a better job of educating the community of who we are and what we hope to bring to this neighborhood. I was able to meet 49 of those people personally, and that was fantastic. And the amount of time I was able to spend since October speaking one-to-one with these neighbors, offering one-to-one meetings like I did with Ms. Perez off-site for coffee, gave me an opportunity to really hear what it is that this community needs from us. Obviously, the concerns I've listed is what we've always heard. Concerns around traffic and speeding and loitering, late night issues on an empty lot, the parking and the sound. These are all things that our CBO, Peter Stone, will kind of talk about the process and how we've involved the consultants and the engineers to help us with this. We've had 2 of my 6 town hall meetings. Had a hosted pancake breakfast recently where I was able to do a kind of a question and answer. And I'm going to continue to do that. That's my outreach is going to be something I'm going to take also very seriously. So the interesting thing, as I'm able to meet with our neighbors, I put some really critical comments that I've been hearing. Number one, we as an organization, myself as a superintendent, we have to do a better job of explaining what a public charter school is. It was fascinating to hear the number of people who thought we were the new Holy Cross. They thought we were a private school. Everybody wanted to know how much does it cost. You've got a great program. We're reading about it. We see it. But how much does it cost? I speak Spanish, was able to meet with a lot of the Spanish speaking, and many of them weren't clear of who we are. So I wanted to do some town hall meetings in that area. And the number one thing that I just really valued of what I heard is how do we get involved? How do we be a part of what you're going to be a part of? And contribute to our neighborhood, include our voice. I think that's, as you heard from Ms. Perez, that's what we need to do. I need to be able to hear the concerns of this neighborhood and ensure that we do that. Our community partnerships is something that really resonates with what I'm hearing that's happening in West Sacramento. Future Ready, the home run projects, that what you're doing and what you're hoping to achieve is what I have been wanting to do for many years. As a Sac State grad, I did my graduate work there and my administrative work. I started a conversation with President Gonzalez back in the day, and I think it was the first week that President Nelson was appointed. I got to be his first superintendent to meet with him in his office, and I outlined an idea of a partnership. And I said, we need to do something that's a win-win. Number one, we've got an issue with a teacher shortage. We've got an issue with providing stronger education for our communities, and we've got to figure out how to get the disconnect between the university faculty and have it be fully understood so we can get them on our campus. So we officially announced in August a partnership with River Charter Schools. It's on the Sac State website. It's been announced at president meetings through the CSU system. And this partnership is not just about River Charter Schools. We have a very unique opportunity to provide space for the university. We're going to provide over a portable and a half that's theirs. We've purchased that. These prefabricated modules are being built in Manteca, and we have 1.5 being built for Sac State that they're going to design with professional development opportunities and counseling. And the most important thing is this is to benefit the community. These services will not be only available for us. It'll be available for the entire community, regardless of school of attendance. This is just a recent activity. We host our kids at Sac State. We have a writing program, and that's what's going on now. It's actually 2 weeks ago. So the concerns from the community in our temporary site gave us a little heads up of what we need to think about when we get to a bigger site. So the community said, traffic. We're worried about where you are at these 2 churches. What are you going to do? West Sacramento has an amazing police department, and I was able to work directly with Officer Marquez and his traffic safety division. was able to set up a training at our site. This is a picture of our staff that attended this, and we were able to get guidance from West Sacramento of how to properly cross students on a crosswalk. Got some really cool gear too, as you can see. So, and we're just going to stay really proactive. We're going to be responsive to our families and hear their needs. So our commitment as a school is about West Sacramento. Our outreach and sponsorship of our Bridgeway Play, and I'm fascinated right now with working closely with BB Can. I've been able to work with some of their leaders, and I've promised to be a part of that organization. I think that's a community and an organization I want to be more part of. I'm also very active in the chamber. We are also very actively going to be ensuring that we do this for all of the community and our efforts. So our promise to the city of West Sacramento, first of all, our Sac State community outreach it's going to be a dedicated space, as I've mentioned, to the CSU team and faculty will be running that. We'll have counseling and psychology, math, science support. We have a writing program and much more. These are things that we'll look and find out from the community based on needs assessment. Every school, every public school has to do a needs assessment, and what I want to do is I want to include our community in that. We normally do our school site council and our families. I would like to include and invite people like members of the community, like Ms. Perez and others, to be part of that. What are the needs assessments year after year for the Broderick Bright neighborhood? And obviously, needs are going to drive services. That'll drive what we do in our community. Collaboration will be at the core of our partnership. Our charter school, West Sacramento Broderick Bright community, is what our hope is and what our goal is. And I think our final slide here is our recent photo of what we're planning on proposing to the neighborhood. Clearly, it's going to be a beautiful site for kids. And right now, I'm just going to have Peter Stone come up and kind of outline the process of how we got to where we are today. And then we do have a few people from the community that have helped us with our studies. And I'm not sure if that we should be part of this final 6 minutes, or should that be in public comment?
So here's my, you can choose to do what you wish. Here's my request is when folks have their contracted architect come in under public comment, or their vice president, the president speaks here and then the vice president comes under public, it kind of makes a mockery of the time limits.
Okay.
But to the extent to which there are community supporters or partners or other folks who are not close in parts of the development project team, that's appropriate. And as I say, you have legally, the right is open. But it's heard better, I think, to the extent to which it's not intentionally just trying to blow up the time limits that are supposed to be equitable.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mayor and City Council members, for this opportunity to speak. And I'm Peter Stone, the Chief Business Officer for River Charter Schools, and we're seeking approval to build the permanent school for our Lighthouse Charter School on land at Brighton Hobson. And we believe this is of great importance to the community as well as the students and families we've served. We look at many sites and buildings all over the northern part of West Sacramento, which is the area we're seeking to serve and is approved by our charter authorizer, Washington Unified School District. We would have been happy to locate in and renovate an existing school site, and we did approach the school district about co-locating at an existing school site, but we were told there were none available. So many of the buildings we looked at were very challenging to locate a school in, not zoned for a school, too close to railroad tracks, in industrial complexes, et cetera. So when this site became available in the heart of the area we were seeking to serve and able to be a neighborhood school, we chose it for the new school facility. And we're delighted to find that it fit right into the city's general plan guidelines. We've spent a great deal of time to make sure that the plan we are bringing to you tonight is well developed and takes advantage of best practices in the development of this free public charter school to serve its students. As we have worked with various experts to conduct all sorts of studies, traffic, noise, air quality, cultural, biological, etc., we successfully sought to make changes to the project to reduce any impacts on the environment and neighborhood to less than significant. As a couple of examples, the version 12 site plan, which the rendering there is from, has an extensive on-site pickup and drop-off area with over 750 feet of car stacking, and it keeps all of the healthy, beautiful, large oak trees in place, except the ones that the arborist and the city arborist have agreed are not safe and need to be taken down, and there's about 7 of those. As with our Delta Elementary Charter School, which is in its 11th year, we look forward to Lighthouse Charter School making a similar and important contribution to the community while being responsible neighbors. Thank you, and what I would like to do now is have Ken Anderson, one of our consultants, come and speak.
Bear with me while I raise the microphone. Very briefly, my name's Ken Anderson with KD Anderson and Associates. We're the traffic engineering consultant of the project. I've been doing this for 35 years, registered in California, and we've worked for more than 80 different Northern California school districts. Very briefly, the traffic study that was prepared for the project addresses CEQA and city requirements, follows city guidelines, and standard engineering practice. The analysis concluded that the project has no significant traffic impacts, but we identified many measures that could be incorporated into the operation of the school to take care of those aspects of school operation which normally affect their neighbors. A transportation management plan, the drop-off area that's been sized to be commensurate with the school, crosswalks, and extended sidewalk off-site. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
And just so which, the city, well, actually, we'll wait till the end of the applicant's presentation.
And then I would like to have Jim Brennan come forward as another consultant of ours.
Good evening. I'm Jim Brennan, owner of J.C. Brennan Associates. We are a noise and vibration consulting firm in Auburn, California. I've been doing work in West Sacramento. In fact, I worked on your first general plan after you first became incorporated and wrote your noise standards back then. I think one thing I want to say is that you have very specific criteria and procedures to follow in your noise element on how to evaluate a project, and we followed those very closely and looked at the noise impacts. I would like to address the fact of the service road, though, just because it was brought up, and we ran the numbers on that and did not see an impact compared to your transportation noise source criteria. Since we wrote our report, the Planning Commission has recommended extending that wall the entire length of that, and so I applaud them for that. Any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Does that conclude the applicant's presentation? All right, so there are questions for any of the applicant's witnesses? Representative Ledesma?
Yeah, I do have a couple, thank you. So, and I think that the last person got to the heart of it. So in planning, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to the map of the actual map of the property, but there was made a recommendation from the Planning Commission for, if I'm right, a 6-foot sound wall, correct? Is that, and I don't know, I haven't heard from the applicant, or not the applicant, I'm sorry, from the applicant, yes. Whether or not that's been accepted as part, I know that was brought up to the Planning Commission, but I haven't heard whether that has been, a wall has been suggested here.
Yes, I think one of the questions that Ms. Perez had was that the requirement from the Planning Commission said a sound attenuating wall, which could be wood, could be vegetative, or it could be a sound wall. We are in agreement with putting up a concrete fence at the 6-foot limit, and in fact, shown a design. We've selected one from a company and David Tilley has had a chance to look at it. So a 6-foot fence that would go the entire length of the southern perimeter, joining the 8 neighbors or the 8 homes and our property.
And so you do have that as?
That was a wall of some sort was put on a sound attenuating wall, which at that planning commission meeting was said to be, it could be wood, it could be vegetative, or it could be concrete. We are happy to do, and are actually planning and have got bids ready to go for doing the concrete fence down the entire perimeter there.
On the south border?
On the south, yes.
The backside of the
Yes.
houses along Hobson?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what, wasn't very clear. Thank you.
And Mr. President, if I could add, it was added by the Planning Commission as a mitigation measure, so it would be a requirement of the project.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, I'm not quite sure I understand why we didn't have a staff presentation on this item and a report of the Planning Commission's adoption in this hearing, but it wasn't part of the hearing procedure. But we normally would know, we would normally get a report at the beginning what the Planning Commission had done and what was actually properly before us. So
Yeah, that's.
would have been helpful in this case. Are there other questions for the applicant?
On that note, as
Oh,
a point
sorry.
of procedure?
Yes.
Will staff come back? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't have the
Yes,
playbook
if-
in front of me. They will come?
They're not on the, yes, you, at your request.
Okay, thank you.
There are questions, Ms. Endine?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to hear more about the discussion at Planning Commission, and not just because I've been a planning commissioner and I'm really interested in this, but because this is a conditional use permit, so it's allowed in the zone with certain conditions. And so I think that's the question before us, is the appellant is questioning whether or not those were considered. So I would like to hear a little more about that, since I haven't seen that tape, and I have all the written paperwork, but no more than that. Thanks.
Yeah, the commission's recommendation is simply marked as recommending approval of the CUP, so we don't have the appropriate information to be able to decide. Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Actually, so for the, I think it was for the parking, whoever was working on the parking analysis. So this might have applied to noise and traffic as well. We don't have criteria and standards for schools because state law exempts public schools from the city's zoning requirements. So as you were doing that analysis, what standards were you and guidelines and criteria were you applying?
We've observed the afternoon pickup at many other charter schools to determine on a per-student basis how many parents are there when the bell rings, to figure out how that fits onto the site. That was included in our analysis, and that led to the sizing of the drop-off with the other parking on the site, and the numbers that we have identified fit that for the first phase of the project.
So it's not a test of is the parking and circulation adequate to some standard? Is it parking and circulation is consistent with some range of what's normal for similarly situated schools?
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to say it. Most, as you're aware, most school design projects, specifically public schools, have a site delivered by the state of a size. You can fit certain things on the site. Different aspects of it then can be accommodated on the site. Things like event parking, quite frankly, cannot. But with regard to making the site work, there's not a uniform standard that says, every parent should be accommodated on site. There's an expectation that some people will be off site, and sometimes parents just choose to park there and those kind of things. But our work identified the quantity of parking we expect to see there in the afternoon and compared that to the supply that's going to be available.
Okay, thank you. All right, then with that, if there are no further questions at this time, then we're going to proceed to a public testimony. So again, this is limited to 3 minutes per person. The first request is by Lindsay Smith. And just to cue it up, so we don't spend a lot of time in transit, Ms. Smith will be followed by Megan Bennett.
Good evening. I will be very brief. My name is Lindsay Smith, and I have 3 boys at Lighthouse Charter School this year. They're in 1st, 2nd, and 4th grade. And we live in the Broderick neighborhood. We've been there for 10 years. It's a wonderful community. And we are 4 blocks from the new school site. And my boys are so excited to be able to walk to school next year and ride their bikes. And we're very happy at the school and looking forward to having it in our neighborhood, in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Megan Bennett will be followed by Dominic Tamari.
Good evening. Most of what I was going to say has already been covered, so I'm going to skip a lot of it. I just basically wanted to introduce myself. My name is Megan Bennett. I have 2 children at Lighthouse Charter School. I am on the River Charter School Board and am an active member of this community. I wanted to thank you all for your continued support with this community. Again, I'm going to skip a lot of what I was going to say, so let me just find where I want to go to. I believe that Lighthouse Charter School moving to the Bright neighborhood will not only improve the area, but it'll also expose our students to the amazing diverse culture that the Bright neighborhood has to hold. For the last 3 years as a parent and more recently as a board member, I have watched Steve Lewis and our principal, Mr. Freeland, who I believe is over there, work tirelessly to collaborate to address the concerns of the neighbors in our temporary location, and I know they will continue to do the same in our new location as we build more community partnerships. Thank you.
Thank you. Dominic, and then Dominic will be followed by Darren Hall.
Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you for your time and thank you for your consideration of this issue. My name is Dominic Tamari. I'm a board member of the River Charter Schools. I'm a founding board member. We started off as a small little charter school in Clarksburg. And that opening of that school remains one of the proudest things that I've done, or the most, one of my best accomplishments personally, watching the opening day of that school. And I hope that I get the same feeling that I had that day when we opened this school next August, and the smiling faces of students and parents, and hopefully you as elected officials witnessing what I hope will be a really great contribution to the community. We've really worked hard to reach out to the community, and the partnership that we have with the CSU, University of Sacramento, I think is going to really bring enrichment to not only to our educational program, but also to the community as a whole, and particularly the Brighton Broderick neighborhood. The services that we think we can offer there are going to be, very unique, and I think to the community in terms of what you can get now and what we've offered in the past. So once again, thank you for your consideration of this. I am here in support of the staff recommendations that I read on the agenda, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominic. Darren Hall will be followed by Miranda Barton.
Good evening, Mayor Cabalin and staff members and fellow council members. And I just want to thank you for everything that you do every day for our city. I know there's a lot of things that you do that it's not just meetings. You can see down the whole list of all the different councils and committees that you're on, and I appreciate all that. Really, I want to go back to my notes. So just a couple things I'd like to say is currently I'm the vice chair of our board, and previously I was the chair for 2 terms. I've been in the middle of this as we have moved into West Sacramento, and as you may or may not be aware, this has been a long and tenuous process for us. We have found a home, and we need a permanent home for our children, and we're hoping that you're going to help us through that process. The other key thing that I want to make sure you understand is that all of us on the board, we are Yolo County and West Sac residents, and will continue to be those individuals first. We look out for our families, we look out for our children. We are not going to just open our communication through this process until we get open. We're going to continue our communication even after we're open. We want to hear the community because we are the community. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Darren. Miranda Burton, who will be followed by Pia Wong.
Good evening. My name is Miranda Burton. I'm a resident of the Broderick area. I live right there by Elkhorn, so I totally understand your concerns. I have a little parade of children every morning and every afternoon in front of my house as well, so I totally get that. I also am a parent of a 2nd grader at Lighthouse Charter School. I could talk forever, but I will not, about how great Lighthouse is and their PBL and how every adult knows my child by name, although he's not the smartest or the neediest or the most outgoing kid. Everybody knows him, just because that's how Lighthouse is. And I believe they will bring that same vibrance to the Bright and Broderick communities in our new home. But I don't think anybody here is arguing about how great the school is. I think the question is why here? And I would just like to say that I've been a part of this effort since before Lighthouse Charter School was even a part of it, when we were just trying to get a school there on Lighthouse Drive. And I was very concerned because for the past few years, my neighbors and I have watched the other side of town blossom. And we've seen great grocery stores and great retail and even the fancy Dollar Tree go into the other side of town. And this is such a great community resource. It really is an asset to our community. And we just please want to find a way to have it on our side of town. Thank you.
All right. The folks at Dollar Tree are envious of devil may care, though, just. All right, come on. Welcome. Here we followed by Greg Tirico.
Good evening, Mayor Cabaldon and members of the City Council. My name is Pia Wong. I'm the Associate Dean of Research and Community Engagement for the College of Education at Sacramento State. I'm very pleased to be here tonight speaking in support of Lighthouse Elementary School in its new location. I've worked as a university partner to many public schools in our region, and I've established over 25 such partnerships during my almost 25 years at Sac State. As was said earlier today, partnerships are really a win-win proposition. Our candidates at the university gain real-life professional experience in settings where they're supported by professionals to translate theory into practice and build their professional knowledge base. The students in partnership settings, they experience immediate benefits. Their class size gets cut in half. They have extra adults to answer their questions and give them extra support and enhance their curriculum. And the in-service professionals in the partnership also benefit. They gain a partner, a thought partner. They have access to new ideas and different perspectives, and they can tap into the university resources. Sac State's partnership at Lighthouse is going to generate all of these benefits and more. We're using this new opportunity to create an interprofessional collaboration where we're bringing as many of the 18 credential programs at Sac State, bringing those students to Lighthouse so that we can provide a full service collaboration. It'll be the first one that we've tried in this region in over 20 years, so we're very excited about that. And we're especially committed to the fact that this particular partnership is going to be in the Bright Broderick neighborhood, a neighborhood that we had partnered with through Golden State Middle School many years back, and we're very happy to be back in this part of West Sacramento, sort of the heart of the city and representative of its very, very proud tradition. I've worked with Steve Lewis since I arrived at Sac State. I think he's the right leader for this kind of collaboration. I know that he is very committed and steadfast in his work for students and families and communities, and we're just very honored to have the opportunity to work with your city and to work with the school community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Greg Tirico, and we followed by, I might be overdoing Marcia Tirico, or it's probably Marcia. Is it Marcia? And I'm over reading the handwriting. All right.
Good evening. Let me start by saying I recognize the value of great education for our youth, and I have no doubt in my mind that the Lighthouse Charter School is going to provide a wonderful education for local students, and I'm sure they already provide a great education for their current student body. Some of my notes may be just, I went on the website and looked over the 640 pages of documents and jotted some notes down. It may be just some of it a misinterpretation of the documents, but I think there's some flaws in the plan and some flaws in some of the documents. So I'd like to go over three concerns that I wrote down. One is the sound wall. The Planning Commission modified the mitigation measure to add a 6-foot tall solid wall with sound attenuation properties. That covers a very broad spectrum of systems. So we're curious about what systems will be used. Adjacent to the basketball courts, they've determined that a CMU wall was appropriate. The vehicle noise at the staging area on the south side of the property, which is adjacent to 1432 and 1436 Hobson, we'll have on the south side of the student property student noise, and also the echoing of students out playing that's going to echo off of the two-story structure that's approximately 26 feet tall, which is a set of apartments on the other side of the field. So not only from the stacking area, you're going to have, I know they face the classrooms in that direction, but they're going to bounce off that wall and echo back to the houses on the south side. We want to know that an appropriate sound wall is being agreed to and one that has acceptable sound attenuation properties. One that also has architectural features that fit into your backyard. You're going to look out your back window and you're going to see this wall. I mean, we don't want to, and I know we've talked, I've heard wood slat mentioned a lot of times, and then I've heard concrete walls. There's 10,000 different styles of these walls. We just want to make sure that it's one that's appealing to the eye, right? Something that fits into a neighborhood setting. Also, and if you look at the trailer park at the corner of Hobson, Sac Ave and Todd Hunter, they have a sound attenuation wall, right? One similar to what I've heard also being thrown out there, but it's poorly designed, poorly installed, not structurally stable. On a high wind event, I've seen those panels twice now collapse and fall over. So that's another thing. We want to make sure that it's a structurally sound wall that's going to be in our backyard, that's not going to be a safety hazard to the students or to us either. We want to make sure that it's durable. Let me move on to the second one. Emissions, right? That's it?
That's it, yeah. You guys happen to share notes?
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Marcia Tarico. I live at 1436 Hobson Avenue, and I'm very concerned about the school going in simply because as a resident on Hobson, we are going to take the brunt or the impact of the school in the neighborhood. And I do agree the school has a lot to offer, but we cannot lose sight of the impact that this is going to have on residents. My brother was referring to the emissions report, and when we looked at that, we saw that the significant point was 1,100, and their daily operating GHG emissions is 1,092 point something. So they're 7.32 hundredths away from that significant impact point. Now, on their traffic analysis report where they compared the schools to get the average of how many cars would be on the school grounds on a specific day, they estimate that it's 158 cars, including staff, per day. If they are operating at full capacity of 600, I don't know how that's possible. Nobody's talked about pickup after school, the extension program. There are going to be cars coming then, and I don't think they're included in that traffic analysis report. And when they did that report, they put the student body at 425, not at 600 full capacity, as they said they would do in all of their testing and reporting. The other big thing for me is parking. They have basically 14 parking spots available to over 250 families. And those spots are not on the school site, they are on the exterior on Bright and Hobson on their property lines, because they anticipate a staff of 47 when they're at full capacity. And the staff is going to be parking on the on-site parking spaces. That leaves nothing for parents. My concern is my house is close to Bright Avenue. So if those spaces are occupied, or parents want more than 10 minutes, they're going to be at my house, which is a safety issue for exiting my own residence. Put yourself in our shoes, please.
Thank you. And Cindy Conant? Welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I guess I just want to say I'm very disappointed that the Planning Commission and the bodies that govern the city would have virtually put this school in our backyard with no notice to us whatsoever. We found out when the school appeared one day to introduce it to the neighborhood. And in that finding, they could tell which neighbors were not in support of this because of the traffic. Everybody would support education, charter school, Catholic school, public school. But what you're doing is shoving a square peg into a round hole. Had that been left as residential, we might have 50 more cars in the neighborhood. As it is now, I cannot get out on Hobson at the corner, largely because the school sign blocks the view of Bright Avenue, and I have to pull out past the crosswalk to see that the road is clear. Not to mention that that corner has only 2 stops. It's on Hobson Street. So the people on Bright Avenue race back and forth all day long from the apartments to Sac Ave, and it's a problem. A woman was killed in front of the Valero gas station. There is a truck that stops on Sac Ave every morning, every evening, that delivers cars to Big John or the other business next to it. There are things there that cause traffic incidents and will get magnified with a couple hundred extra cars coming in the neighborhood. And it is just astounds me that you all sit there like it's not a big deal. You can sacrifice a few for this school to come into our neighborhood. I'm going to have a parking lot next to my house because I'm the last one on the street. I don't want a parking lot there. I didn't buy to have a parking lot next to me. I knew houses would be around us, but you're not even considering it, and how the Planning Commission let it get this far without a note. We had to go petition to get even this 3-minute hearing? This is ridiculous. And I don't think you would like it if it happened to you. I mean, I don't know what this school is going to do, but I know that Dave, whatever his last name is, seems like he's racing to make this happen. They're not even pressing the school to put in the permanent structure first, which was part of the agreement, I'm told. So we're taking all these shortcuts to let this school in, and I'd like to know who they know or whose hand are they shaking. Why is it happening this fast?
All right, thank you. All right, so those are all the requests you have under public testimony. So now we will return to the appellant and the applicant. We'll go first to the applicant. We reverse the order in the closing, so the applicant now has an opportunity to respond to the testimony and the evidence that's been presented in the hearing, but this is not an opportunity to introduce any new evidence or testimony or to restate your own direct testimony. So applicant first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I just want to promise and thank you for this opportunity and ensure you that I will continue to work with the community on their concerns. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Johannesson had a question.
Just
Oh, are you
just a
not
quick
done,
question.
Steve?
I don't know if Peter wanted to, go ahead.
On the issue with the sound wall and the aesthetics, has that been part of the conversation? Because I know a couple of folks have mentioned that, maybe a cement wall might be the best for sound attenuation, but there's also a residential neighborhood and it has to have a certain look. So is that part of your discussion?
Absolutely. One of the things I was, got that idea from Ms. Perez. We actually talked about, including the neighborhood and local artists to determine what we want that wall to look like. Absolutely, I would not, I mean, if through our plans, the size of the wall we put up is within that requirement that works with our neighbors, most definitely involve them in those conversations. As well as understand that a lot of those concerns that we're not anticipating is we are anticipating many more walkers at this neighborhood school as well. So that will also address some of those issues we're discussed.
All right, thank you.
Just a little more clarification on the attenuating wall. At the previous hearing, we were to take and have the design for that wall submitted to the planning department. And so we found one that has a layered stone kind of look that is on both sides. So it's both, good for both sides. And that was presented, as I recall, I think I showed that to David Tilley. And one of the keys is there is a requirement that was also placed that said that the sound wall needed to be up by the time we start doing foundations. Foundations need to commence the beginning of February. And so for that to happen, we were assuming that we were starting from November 3rd after the Planning Commission meeting, which would have given ample time to go through the permitting process for the engineering of the sound wall, or the sound, the concrete fence, and then to go through the construction and allow for some weather and such to precede the foundations. I think if we're going to get into the kind of variety of design things, because we've actually got a manufacturer selected who has the kind of fence that we've been talking about, so that we can promptly meet the other city requirement that says we can't start the foundations until February, until that sound wall or that sound fence is up. And so that's already in the plan, and we've also been told that the sound wall can't be, by city standards, can't be more than 7 feet tall. And so we have the materials from the vendor to do a 6-foot fence. We could do a 7-foot fence, but those materials will take a longer time to actually get into place. So if there was a desire for us to do a fence that has been acceptable to the city with, it looks very nice, the kind that we would want to see with the same things that could be visible for on the neighbor's side. That could be done if we change the requirement for the timing on its completion.
What is the difference between a 6-foot and a 7-foot fence in terms of attenuation? I think the testimony was that they have an apartment that potentially has sound deflection back into the neighbors.
Well, I would defer to Jim Brennan on that.
With regards to attenuation from a wall, generally when you break line of sight between the noise source and the people who are listening on the other side of the wall, you get about a 5 to 6 dB reduction. For every other foot, you get about a dB, so dB and a half. So I wouldn't expect a great deal additional noise attenuation from a 7-foot wall. With regards to reflections, that's a very good point, and it can be noticed on like a single clap or something like that. Sometimes you can hear that reflection off of a wall, but in terms of adding to the noise environment, you have to take into account the extra distance that has to travel. Think of it as a pool shot where you have an incident angle where you have a noise source, it bounces off the wall. A lot of it's going to go off into the atmosphere. Some of it will be diffracted into the atmosphere from angles on the wall. But it's the additional distance it has to travel. And in terms of adding sound, we generally don't even get another dB on something like that, just because of the additional distance.
Okay, thank you. Yep, thank you.
Okay, if I can stay there and ask a question. Sure. Because the reduction in sound you're speaking of is of what type of wall? What material?
Oh, okay. So
because and let me kind of skip to where I'm going, because I'm hearing a lot of debate, or there's fluidity in the fact of what material that this wall might be, should be, needs to be. And I'm trying to get to a point of understanding, because I think, well, I just want to hear from your perspective, if that measurement of sound reduction, what's the sound wall material you have in mind when you're
So
stating that?
generally, a wall has to have a density of about 3.5 pounds per square foot. So concrete can do it. There are prefabricated sound walls out there. The idea is that they're tightly fitted. You do not have any warping that goes between any of the pieces. Some people have tried to use these keystone walls, but there's little minor cracks in them. They're very ineffective, actually. You want something that's solid. You want something that has a footing. When you use a concrete wall, they're going to have to design a footing for it, just for wind load and things like that. On these prefabricated walls, many times it's a pilasters and then a panel that slides in and has a footing at the bottom. But the key is that it has at least 3.5 pounds per square foot of density.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant before we close that portion of the hearing? All right, then we'll proceed to the appellant. Surprise, you have 10 minutes.
So I won't restate what I already stated earlier, but I did want to say one thing is I didn't pick 8 foot out of the top of my head. It was I was going by what I've seen in other not just West Sacramento schools, but other areas that have some kind of concrete sound barrier wall. I wasn't sure of the maximum height. I heard 7 feet from the city. I was unaware of that specification. In regards to the traffic, the traffic, one way that they're mitigating it is they're bringing it all onto the property. So all the traffic is actually coming onto the property and is going to be on that road right directly behind our property. So when I hear, oh, well, traffic's not going to be that bad, it's not going to be that bad, it's not going to be that bad for the rest of the neighborhood, but it is going to be bad or inconvenient and noisy for those that are, for us that are butt up against it. And, I brought forth this appeal because I felt strongly about the fact that I don't think our request is unreasonable, and I'm sorry that the Planning Commission didn't, that we weren't able to, by our public comment, have the planning commissioners understand what we were trying to get across. I think that had they understood how important this was to us, that it wouldn't have gone this far. And one last thing I wanted to say was thank you for listening to the appeal. And I really appreciate all of your extra questions to both myself and to the applicant. Thank you. Do you have any other questions?
Are there
for
any
me?
more extra questions? Ms. Andy?
I guess just a clarifying question, the primary reason for bringing this forward is the noise and the having a barrier between Hobson residents and the school. That's a primary.
That is the primary reason. When we talk about traffic, and the traffic studies that were done, I do feel that they were thorough. I have complete confidence in city staff in regards to that. I've been on other issues that have, we've done traffic studies. I was the one that brought speed bumps to Brighton Broderick, so I am familiar with staff and their capability of doing that. My biggest concern was that the school is going on a small site. The traffic will be put onto the site and directly affecting us. And if any of the board members lived in my house, what would they expect, what kind of wall would they expect to have? And so that's my concern, and that's my request. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Attorney, is it appropriate for the staff presentation to come in before or
Yes.
after the closure of the hearing?
Yes, I think it would be appropriate to, either way, you can have them do it now before you close the public hearing in case you have further questions.
All right, let's do that. All right, Mr. Tilley?
So many of the items that I had intended to address as part of my initial presentation in terms of the background, I believe have come up tonight. So perhaps if it would be your pleasure, I would sort of focus on the Planning Commission hearing and deliberation on the project, unless you would prefer to go through the whole presentation from the top.
Well, I think at least begin with what is actually before us. What are the planning commission conditions, what are they comprised of? If we were to sustain the planning commission's decision, what is the nature of the specific conditions that were included as part of the project? And then whatever else you feel is helpful, and I know there will be questions also. So.
Yeah, so the Planning Commission did consider this item in hearing, a fully noticed hearing back on November 2nd. We did have a lengthy discussion with Ms. Perez presented there, as well as some of the other folks that are here tonight also presented at that time during the public hearing portion of that decision. The matter of the wall did come up, and we spent quite a bit of discussion along the wall, initially through the analysis of the noise relative to our thresholds in general plan. The only area that was found that would potentially exceed those thresholds was adjacent to where their play areas and basketball courts. So initially, that's where a solid wall of sound attenuating was going to be placed. There was also, that discussion came up quite a bit, and so the Planning Commission ultimately decided to amend that mitigation measure to have a solid attenuating wall of some design along the entire length of the southern perimeter of this project, where initially they were proposing a more standard fence. That wall would provide not only sound attenuation, but obviously visual barrier into the school, which would be in the major backyards of essentially of those homes along the southern end. That was a mitigation measure that the Planning Commission sort of essentially expanded upon, and with the applicant at that time, the Lighthouse development team, was amenable to that additional length of wall. We discussed congestion. As we know, many schools are often very busy, especially during the drop-off time. And especially and that's not unique to our community, is very common. So our mission in terms of our initial review of the project and with our traffic experts in Public Works was to try to get as much stacking on-site as possible, to try to not have as much queuing in the streets and consuming of parking on-street. We recognize there is trade-off comes with that does put more vehicles onto the site and behind the residents. But the alternative, should the school go in without the stacking on site, is that there's more queuing in the streets and potentially getting in the way of other persons trying to make their way to work and whatnot in the mornings. The Planning Commission ultimately did approve the project. I think there were 17 conditions that they put on it, many of which were fairly standard, but one of them was one that we sort of brought over from the Lighthouse use permit that was approved for their facilities over on the Park Boulevard area, which is really taking the traffic study and going further and now into the real world as to how they're going to operate, every morning in terms of crossing guards, people flagging to direct the parents to go, things like that. Those are some of the things that we learned when the Lighthouse project off of Park Boulevard went back to Planning Commission last year, where we did have some nearby residents from there come and speak about some of the operational concerns that they had about people parking and blocking their driveways and things of that nature. So that's a follow-on task that needs to be accomplished on this project, so where they can demonstrate to us, and, you know, and he mentioned in the presentation, Sergeant Marquez, who does a lot of the crossing guard training for the schools, so how they can operate that. And that plan is meant to be a living, breathing document. They will need to make adjustments, you know, in how they operate, you know, if it's not working, you know, after the, you know, the begins. So we've attempted to cover those, where no one's pretending that it won't get to be busy out there, you know, especially during drop-off time. You know, many kids, you know, don't walk to school like they may have once done. And I think it's important out there, you know, the school up to 600, that's actually fairly small by school standards. And we've been learning on this one as we go, as the mayor mentioned, usually public schools will go through the state architect and not through us. So in that instance, we have very little, if any, you know, input and insight into how they're developed and what they look like and what kind of conditions we can put on them. So tonight, they're in your packet. I think there was an error in the copying, but the online version, all the Planning Commission conditions were included in there. And I noticed one page wasn't copied, so that was put in front of you tonight. You know, we're not recommending any changes or additions to those conditions, but we certainly would be amenable to those if you wish. So we are recommending that you essentially sustain the Planning Commission's decision in this project tonight. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Questions? So, okay, the intersection at Brighton Hobson, which is a two-way stop?
Yes.
Right, is that going to be a sufficient traffic control measure for an elementary school?
I would have to ask one of our traffic engineers from Public Works to respond to that, if you would permit me to do so.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I was able to review the traffic analysis done by Katie Anderson, and I looked into pretty much every movement and available capacity and how much additional traffic they're going to add based on the city standard. It seems like the intersection is going to be operating below city standards. I mean, at acceptable city standards.
Yes, my question is less about the traffic circulation and more about safety.
As far as safety,
if you have a street with no control measure.
Right. As far as safety goes, I'm assuming there will be a crossing guard during school start time and release. The traffic study does suggest, as part of the mitigation measures, to fix ADA curb ramps, as well as improve some of the crossings and paint them yellow for this intersection and a couple other adjacent intersections, and mark it as a school crossings.
And is there a reason in terms of the circulation patterns or the oversupply of stop signs or what have you that a four-way stop at that intersection would not be warranted given the location of a transitional kindergarten through elementary school?
Having heard public concern based on analysis, per volume-wise, that intersection does not meet an always stop control intersection, but we can definitely look back and to see if it meets any other criteria to meet an always stop control intersection to better control the intersection for safety.
So I mean, this might be a question for David, I'm not sure, or it could be for you. Because we don't, except for private schools, we don't have land use authority over public schools and normal non-charter public schools. We don't have other provisions with respect to transportation management on site. So if this were an office building, for example, we would, of any significant size, we would require that that facility submit to you a transportation management plan that will show how they are going to minimize the number of car trips and promote carpooling and van pooling and other ways, ride sharing, public transit, other ways of minimizing the number of car trips. We haven't done projects like this before,
right.
But other than a hope that more students will walk, there are a lot of things that a school can do and in conjunction with the safe route, including the potential of a four-way stop. But there are a lot of things that a school could do. Did we consider, as a condition of approval, the preparation as a mitigation measure, the transportation management plan for not just for the employees, but for school pupil drop-off as well, pick up?
Yeah, I'll let other folks chime in if they want to, but I believe in the traffic study itself, there's a section that says there should be a transportation management plan or program, whereas if there is issues with traffic on site and if it's not being circulated correctly, that the school should reach out to parents and educate them to how to better utilize the existing facility for better circulation. Does that answer your question?
So then who enforces that after the issuance of the CUP? Or is it just the school should, or is it
Yeah, that's, a transportation management plan is one of the requirements in their traffic study, of which their environmental document is based. So they will need to complete that, and it would end up being an ongoing mitigation measure that they will need to follow, but still being able to, update that, as, real-world conditions warrant. But that will be something that we will need to continue to monitor, especially if we start to hear that the school operations are causing problems.
So if if the school operations do cause problems, do we have any, what is and you've referenced it a couple times, maybe, so I'm just not seeing it, but, so is it require that they have a plan and that they, do their best to try to reduce the number of car trips, or are there performance metrics, or if it's not meeting some standard that we have for vehicle traffic in the neighborhood, do we have the ability to come back at it, or what's the nature of it?
Well, it will be an ongoing requirement to maintain a TMP, much like, many of our other, larger projects. So they will need to in this particular case, the traffic coming from the school is not tripping our typical traffic thresholds you would see at an intersection. I think what we're really trying to get at is more of the congestion, if you will, rather than, sheer volume of cars like, we see in a normal kind of traffic study. So this is about how they operate and how they have their parents, coming and going from the facility, and at what times. One of the things that was mentioned, for example, in the Planning Commission hearing was the concept of maybe a staggered start, so that not everybody in theory is coming, all at the same time. Is a way to sort of spread that out a little bit. So that's all part of the TMP and part of the recommendations and part of what the environmental document is, its foundation.
But how do we assure that how's the TMP's performance measured, and in what ways can it be held accountable?
Well, that's how we have to work on this, because it's not a typical thing where we have too many office employees coming, so they're going to trip a light, so then we work backwards to reduce the trips so we don't trip the light. In this case, what we're committing them to is managing the facility and managing that drop-off, with flaggers, crossing guards and other matters. But these are softer metrics than, what we might see in an office or, larger mixed-use project. But the bottom line here is, at least from a purely traffic standpoint, they aren't tripping any of our level service thresholds.
But the larger office and mixed-use projects are typically going to be in zones that don't require a conditional permit and are not entering into a neighborhood that wasn't expecting the project. So if anything, it feels to me like they should be, the measures and the accountability ought to be stronger in a location where a CUP is required, because it's not consistent with the underlying zoning for the area than it is for the CalSTRS building, which is a waterfront mixed-use zoning overlay. So everyone around the CalSTRS building, all those facilities knew a building was coming. Yes. And so what we've heard tonight is we didn't know that was happening, right? And I for 20 years I lived 2 blocks away from what's now West Marks Elementary. I know the impacts. So part of it is being able to, this is in some senses a test case for us, because we haven't had a lot of experience having any ability to deal with this. We've always had to rely on the school district. And in this case, we don't have that. The state law exempts public schools from our review at all. Under the theory, flawed as it is, that their board of trustees has to be elected too, so if they really, really mess it up, the public has a way to hold them accountable. But that's not the case here, right? The board of the charter school is not accountable to the voters, and only we are. We're the only way that occurs, and so it is necessary that we get this piece of it right. I'm personally interested not in spreading out the car trips, but in reducing the car trips, and there are so many things that a school can accomplish. Bridgeway Island Elementary is a good example of a school that's very effective at this, that the school can, measurable actions that the school can take to minimize the number of vehicle trips altogether, so that many of the impacts that we've heard about today are significantly reduced. So I'd like to see, that's what I'm trying to explore with you, is if there are ways for us to do, and maybe my former planning commissioner friends who have been in this space more can help or throw cold water. But to me, I think it's important to try to get this component of it. What is the school committee to do in terms of that TMP, or at least what are the standards that we are driving towards, or the outcome that we're trying to drive towards, so that when we and the neighborhood and the public are able to review it, we can see whether we're getting that job done.
Thank you, if I may, Mr. Mayor, because it's kind of the line of sight I had around this project, which is around how we approach the conditional use permit, right? So I'm recalling past hearings that we had, and David, you were probably there, on, at least as a commissioner, part of the role you have. It should be the nature of the conditional use permit that you're kind of factoring that sort of, by the very essence of the action you're taking, you're asking the applicant who's going in a place that's not originally zoned for them, on these conditions, you can have this use, right? And so part of my questioning and David, where I was kind of looking at this project, was around which is what Jennifer, the appeal was brought up on, was around noise and around traffic. And we have, I know in the past, taken an approach with very similar things. I'm thinking of the daycare centers we put in the industrial areas out in Southport. And they had typically, the concerns were similar, but kind of a little bit reversed. You had daycare kids coming in, and they were surrounded by trucking operations. And the trucking operations had an interest, like, just to be kind of extreme, they had to, don't get in the way of the trucks, right? So we had, and similarly, we were concerned about the safety of the kids. So we did have, I recall, plans around how we would, extensive requirements, and whether we put them in as conditions or not. I can recall we did ask there should be mitigations for this because of even the perceived safety of the kids. There was no reason, trucks are going 10 miles an hour pulling out of there, whatever, but kids are around. That was the approach at least I used. And the conditional use permit is the city's granting of that use based on kind of our ability to kind of manage through this. So I'm looking at, in a similar way, this project in the same way that the mayor has kind of brought up is, I think everyone agrees that and the planning commission looked at it, but the analysis kind of was the starting point around what the issues needed to be, in my view. And I have not watched the tape of the planning commission meeting. I want to speak ill of what occurred there, but they're in similar ways that we've addressed conditional use permits. You want to kind of not just the minimum amount that has to be done, but the perceived amount, so that they're in essence sharing the neighborhood, and these are the ways that they're going to get through this. So the two areas that I first brought up was the wall, which, because the planning commission did, I think, hear some of that, and they asked for a condition to put a 6-foot wall. And there's a bit, I'm hearing there's a bit of discrepancy over what's 8 foot or 6 foot. Everyone agrees there should be, I think there's some agreement in the room around there needs to be a wall along the backside, the Hobsons. It's going to, so I don't want to get into the detail of that yet. I think that's coming. The other one is around traffic, and to your point, there's just you already started to put in the mitigation that has to be on site to get the queuing off the street, right?
Yes.
And I think where I'm suggesting where maybe the school can take the next step is truly having that management plan around how they're going to address trafficking, and more, where can you put in the checkpoints for the city to make sure, or what are the performance metrics that we're going to see that kind of, that have the connecting points for staff to say that's going to make that happen. Because I think the conditional use permit kind of allows the city to kind of have those kind of metrics, right? It can.
Yes, no, we have we maintain full discretion via the use permit.
And if they're not met, I think the accountability is you're not getting the permit's not going to be issued if those things are not going to be met.
Well, if if it were issued and they weren't following their conditions, and they need to remedy that, or, the potential is for it to go back to planning commission and a potential revocation.
Revocation,
Yeah.
right, and if it has to be renewed at a term out area, then that's your point to enforce it. So to me, the gap we have, at least at this point, is understanding the traffic, even the perceived traffic and parking issues. What's the plan to manage it? Because I'm not a traffic expert. I'm even going to try to be. But again, I know you've tried to mitigate it by getting the cars inside on site. There's going to be. I am a little concerned because I have driven by there, and I know there is only. It's only a two-way stop. And again, maybe the traffic analysis at minimum doesn't say that, doesn't trigger it, but we're putting a school there, and the perception of that could cause safety issues, right? So I think we just need to look at having a kind of a traffic mitigation plan that has been suggested as part of this. It's just because I think that's just not real clear. It's right now what I'm seeing and hearing. It's a little fuzzy. It's a thing they have to do, but I think it just needs to be much more clear, and the accountability around it needs to be much more clear.
So, Mr. Desmond, if I could make one comment. So we are talking about condition 3, which does require a circulation management plan. Is your concern that that is not very detailed?
Well, I think what I'm hearing from the residents and what I'm hearing from even the applicant is a need to look at the area in detail. And it's just, there's not a lot of certainty in it. So whatever that plan is, I think that's the minimum that, to my mind.
Right. So I think there are two possibilities. One, we could look at modifying condition 3 to add some additional performance metrics, or you could take this as, staff could take this as direction from council to make certain that when they review the circulation management plan presented by the school, your issues are addressed. I don't know how comfortable you feel with leaving it at that versus adding some additional particular things that you want to have.
Where are you pointing
This is, I believe this is what was handed
I was going to
out.
ask this question. I think you were saying
That
that
was the one
document that was-
page that wasn't miscopied in your packet.
Yeah, so for those who don't have a copy of it, condition 3 reads, prior to issuance of building permits, the applicant shall develop a circulation management plan for the project site. The circulation management plan shall be subject to approval by the city. The plan shall include procedures for handling any issues that might arise due to traffic coming and going from the school, and may be modified in the future to address real-world issues as they occur.
Okay, so for me, no. And maybe it's because I'm not approaching this question as a mitigation measure as much as a use permit condition. Because the circulation management is given a level of cars, how do you make sure how do you minimize the impact of X level of cars? All right, that's really what that's what circulation management is mainly about. And I am interested in making real what the superintendent said, which was we expect this to be a school that a large proportion of the students will be walking to. And I have absolute confidence that he and the school are committed to that. Knowing the superintendent, he will probably be, taking children on his back from all over the neighborhood personally and riding their big wheels and whatever to get them to the school. I have no doubt that is going to happen, but it's not for me to have a doubt. It needs to be in a condition that we're trying to reduce the number of vehicle trips, period. It's not about the circulation of those vehicle trips. We're trying to reduce the number of vehicle trips to a level that minimizes the overall impact in the neighborhood, not just the circulation of the strips. So that's, the circulation's important for the environmental mitigation, but it isn't the whole story. And that's why the 3 is a start, but it doesn't get there. And I don't think it would be hard to do. It just needs, here's the number of trips that the school anticipates will be occurring, by bike and walking. And here are the 16 things they intend to do in order to accomplish that. And then at the end of the year, you're looking at that and okay, are we on track? It's not the kind of measure that is, okay, sorry, you said you were going to have 200 trips by car and you actually had 202, therefore the school shuts down. Not that kind of it's not that kind of performance accountability measure, but it's providing some metrics and milestones for us to be able to say, hey, this is not working. There's 700 cars now coming instead of 200, and so now for the next year, you need to have a different set of strategies. And if you're not getting there still, then we have to revisit whether or not the permit's happening. We need to have a path for that to occur, so that we're making real on the commitments that the school is making and the commitments that we have to be making to our neighbors if we were to approve the permit. Questions or for staff? Okay.
I think I just have a procedural question because I haven't
Yes.
gone through this process before. So it looks like the action for us is to either accept the appeal or deny the appeal. But then there's other actions that are being talked about within council. So I don't know if we have judicial authority to add in strengthen conditions or something and then move forward. Sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm sorry, I was interrupting you. Yes, this is before you in what's called a de novo review, which means you are free to make any change you want to the conditions.
Okay.
So your choices are really, you can uphold what the planning commission can do, you can uphold the appeal, or you can modify. You could essentially uphold the planning commission's action, but modify the conditions.
Okay. Thank you.
So
So at this point,
would this make progress? Let me read something that we could add to condition 3 and see if this is moving in the right direction.
Yes, but I think we're done with questions of staff, so we're going to proceed to close if the council's prepared to do so, to close the public hearing, then we can move to council's deliberation, including consideration of potential modifications. All right, so with that, then we'll close the public hearing on item 21 and do just that, return to the council for further deliberation discussion. Maybe we'll begin with the city attorney.
So this is probably not going to get you all the way you want to go, but if we added to condition 3, in addition, the plan shall identify trip reduction goals and measures reasonably designed to achieve these goals. These reduction goals and measures shall be subject to annual review and modification as appropriate.
Yeah, that does work for me. I think we would need to be clear that we're talking about employees and pupils, because in a typical non-residential project, we would be just mainly focused on the employees, but we're trying to reduce trips by the pupils' parents as much as we are the small number of employees. Mr. Johannesson.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And then in terms of, so what we're going to be doing is setting goals at this point, and those goals are going to be measured at some point in the future to see if there's compliance.
I would propose an annual review, but it could be
And if they're out of compliance on that particular issue, what
then they would
impact-
be subject to modification as appropriate. And I think it would be, and I would obviously encourage you to check with your staff to see whether they're comfortable with that, but then also with the applicant. But the idea would be that you would establish initially goals and measures to achieve those goals, and then on an annual basis, you would review both the goals and the measures to make sure that the goals still are realistic goals or the appropriate goals, and the measures are actually accomplishing those goals.
Right, and I think at this point, it'd probably be applicant-driven on those goals,
I
because
would-
we really don't.
I would expect that the applicant would prepare the plan and submit it to staff for review and approval.
All right.
And this would be in addition to?
This would be an addition to condition 3. So the condition 3 talks about a circulation management plan. It could be a new condition if you.
I just want to make sure it was an and, not a.
Yes.
Thank you.
David, does that make sense?
On the wall port, I have the same, I'm struggling because it's the real struggle I would have if I were installing a wall on my own well, when I had a backyard, if I were installing a wall on my own, because there's for sound attenuation, I would want the biggest, thickest, most opaque wall possible. But I'm mostly looking at it during the day and on the weekends, and so I also don't. I want something that is appropriately scaled and designed for a residential backyard, and they're trade-offs, right? So, and I mean, even the height is a trade-off in that issue. And we heard about that today. I want a fence or a wall that fits a backyard, which is unlikely to be an 8-foot. An 8-foot cement freeway-style sound wall. And so, I mean, I hate to try to design the wall here. I mean, obviously, we heard lots of requests to do that. And I don't think it's going to be possible to figure out a wall design and choice that everyone will like, because every wall is going to be a trade-off between those two dimensions. So I think it seems like the condition being that there be a wall of that length that covers that length of the property that is sound attenuating and neighborhood appropriate or residential scale or what have you, is the policy statement. Our staff has to review as they would any other submission, review that, and as they have already taken a preliminary look at what's been proposed. But I think trying to figure out materials and even height necessarily in the council hearing is maybe not be allow for the appropriate balancing of those two goals for the neighbors themselves.
And my understanding when we were at Planning Commission was that the term with sound attenuating properties was used because it means something in the engineering world. You had testimony from a sound engineer that it had to be a certain density. And so I think my sense was that sound attenuating properties was not vague. It actually captured a concept that could be enforced. In terms of the aesthetics, that is something that your staff does all the time in design review, is look at the aesthetics of a building subject to, are there any applicable design guidelines here? So, but you have an existing neighborhood, so if it was that the wall would be subject to approval, the design would be subject to approval by staff to both meet the sound attenuating requirements and also to be compatible with the neighborhood, something like that.
Yeah.
Right, because you could, if you can get one more decibel with the 9-foot wall, then sound attenuating alone is the objective. It kind of leads you on this absurd outcome. But at the same time, it needs to be sound attenuating. So to me, I'm comfortable. I mean, we depend on our staff all the time to make those kind of judgments with the specific wall put in front of them, with the specific engineering and specs in front of them based on the policy that's been set.
So at this point, the sound attenuating wall is a mitigation measure. It is not a project condition, though the mitigation measures are functionally project conditions. If we modify that mitigation measure a little bit to add the part about the staff, the applicant's design will be reviewed by staff for compatibility with the neighborhood, something like that.
I think that would be fine. I don't know, are there design, I don't think there are design guidelines in this where they're not in no, so we have no basis to kind of to go off, so.
Okay, any other?
I don't know that we have a standard to point to, and I would be reluctant to, import from some other part of town their design standards. I think we'd be looking at staff to take into account the location, the neighboring properties, and, review a plan proposed by the applicant to both determine that it meets the sound attenuating qualities and is also consistent with the neighborhood, consistent with the architecture of the neighborhood, consistent with the, however we want to say that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Other discussion? I do want to point out the greenhouse gas emissions piece that was brought up in the public hearing. The way our environmental analysis works is the thresholds that are set are there to determine where the tipping point is, right? So we allow this much noise, but not this much noise. And if we say we allow this much noise, but not this much noise, and somebody comes in at this level of noise, we can't say, but you're almost there, right? Because this is the line. Because then if we say, well, you can't do this much noise because you're almost there, then this suddenly is now the rule. And then the next person comes in, but you're almost at this one now. And there's never any consistent rule. And so it is important that that's why we have these thresholds of significance, and they're set largely based on the state guidelines that we get. So in greenhouse gas emissions, which are not air pollution, they are the things that contribute to global warming, the project in an operational basis is within those thresholds of significance. It's not, you don't get close to and therefore trigger an environmental impact. You either do or you don't. And in this case, the analysis by the air quality folks have determined that it does not. So, Ms. Roscoe? Or,
Actually, just will say I have a unique perspective in that I currently live in the middle of two sites that are currently the Lighthouse Charter School, and faced a similar dilemma when the school was being located to its current location, being that I back into a very busy street on 15th every morning, and yeah, I had the same concern about, well, how do I do that if it's already a busy street and there's already cars passing, in a blind spot, and how will the existence of two schools with an unknown amount of cars and parents dropping off at certain times, which largely land the same travel times that I travel every day, how will that exacerbate the situation? I have found that the school has been a tremendous asset to my community, and I'm not to say that this is going to be a direct comparison to where I'd be relocated, because I don't have that perspective, and I can't speak as a neighbor in the area near Hobson. However, in many of and I have canvassed some of my neighbors who I have a very close relationship with, and have asked what their perspective was of having all these children in the neighborhood now. I personally haven't seen, other than maybe a project-based learning night, which happens once a semester, any cars parked in front of my house. And they do have very small parking lots. And again, this doesn't compare to a full K through 8, which would be at full capacity down the road. But it has been an asset to the area. Holy Cross shut down, and I think that was a big blow to a lot of us. Many families had been going to the school for generations. My son even attended Holy Cross, and it was a sad day when the school decided that it was going to close its doors. The way I viewed the opportunity here was as an amenity, not only for the kids in the local community who have to travel somewhere very far to now go to a different school, as opposed to just across the street or down a few where they could walk to a school that had been there, where their parents, had probably attended as well. But now we have an opportunity for a new, energetic group of people who want to bring a project-based learning approach to a community that's never had it before. And I understand there are concerns on both sides. And, in reading the materials, one of the things I underlined was put yourself in the place of a person in this community, and I have done that, and I actually live it every day. But one of the questions I get when people ask me, well, what's good about West Sac? How are the schools? I can say, well, I would love to tell them, well, there's a fantastic, we have fantastic schools, and they are located here, and point to different areas on the map. I can personally attest, as somebody who is familiar with the project-based learning approach, as well as the goings-on in the Delta Charter and the and Lighthouse Charter schools, that there is a tremendous amount of energy and a lot of parent involvement and a lot of enthusiasm revolved around their approach. So I know that's not part of this analysis about how great the school is, but I think that this is a backdrop for another just approach. If we're talking about mitigation measures or conditions for conditional use permits, if we're going to really be looking at the school as a school for the future and for leadership opportunities, we could look at a universe where there are incentives to staff to ride share or to walk or bike or commute together, and incentives for the children, not only just because we have an opportunity now for kids to walk because it's in their community, but once the Sycamore Trail line comes through, to invite people from the south, check out our program, please, and do so on foot or bike. And this is a new approach to how we are getting kids out of their house and on their bikes and more activity. So I see it more as a way to tackle an opportunity to benefit the community at the same time and really put Lighthouse as a model in this community. So I appreciate all of the discussion around on both sides tonight, and I think that this is poses an interesting opportunity for both sides to have a win.
Ms. Andine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if I would feel comfortable with the two additions, the clarification on the goals regarding traffic and I think some tenor about safety, and then also the aesthetics of the neighborhood wall. I think this will. It's good that this came forward. I think this could make this a even stronger project in a way with the conditions that have been put in place by the Planning Commission, and then with these two enhancements. And I think that's part of this process, is actually hearing from the community. It sounds to me to have the superintendent talk about all of the work with the community. I feel that that's important to this school, and I think it will continue to be. So I think this can, if it moves forward with those two additions, I think we'll end up with an even stronger project.
Yeah, I agree. I think knowing the superintendent, again, I imagine if this were approved tomorrow, the Lighthouse will be on some initiative and campaign to have 0 car trips to the school and prove that they're the first, the only all-bike school in the country. So I don't know. This is a classic West Sacramento hearing. A former planning commissioner, a longtime community activist, and her neighbors, and a great school in raising all the right questions and issues about how to get better and how to do it right, and also to grapple with progress and place. Like Mr. Roscoe, I've lived next to River City, West Morris for 20 years, and grapple with all these issues: parking, transportation, not being able to go to work between 8:15 and 8:45. I mean, they're small annoyances, but they are still when they're daily, they're part of your life. But the difference was those schools were there when I moved in, and when I bought my house, they already existed, and so it's why I think we and the Planning Commission have both taken special care to try to get this right. At the same time, there is a reason I keep mentioning that the state doesn't allow us to regulate land use for schools, and this is the reason why, because no schools would ever be approved. Because schools by necessity, they involve children and parents and a lot of messiness. And so this legislature, a long time, decades ago, said, guess what, cities, you can regulate everything in your boundaries except for schools, because you will never approve any. And I'm glad we don't have to do it too often. But I do think the school's been on a long journey, and the parents at the school and neighbors in the greater Broad Arc and Bright area have been working on and trying to advocate to get the school in place for years and years and years, with a lot of obstacles thrown in the way. Unexpected barriers that the school and community neighbors and residents have all valiantly overcome. So there's a great story here, and I think the things that we've done tonight in the Planning Commission and that the applicant's proposing to do will dramatically improve it. It will still be, we will still owe a great debt of gratitude, whether they want it or not, to the neighbors who even with these improvements put up with, like neighbors around any school, put up with the school in order to create opportunities and great places for their kids and for the whole community. And so I want to join my colleagues in acknowledging both the appellant and those who have come here to raise questions and objections and concerns, and the applicant, who's worked really hard the applicant team really to create a high quality high-quality program in parts of our community that have desperately needed it the most, and have really approached this with an eye towards including and giving voice to the families and to the neighbors that they are hoping to serve. So, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma?
Thank you. I just echo that, and I think we're probably at the point of somebody needs to make a motion on this, but I will say, I agree with everything you said. This process is the way it's supposed to work. Unfortunately, there had to be a little detour at the Planning Commission, but that's the way the process works, and it is very West Sacramento that you have folks that found the right avenue and used the mechanisms they had at their disposal to bring kind of get their voice out there. And I think this process worked too, because honestly, it gave me a little more opportunity to hear what the applicant was really trying to do and the direction they're going. And hopefully the outcome of this is that I'm supportive of the additional measures that we're going to add, conditions we're going to add to it. Because I think it will make it stronger. I think our intent behind this, and I hope we can move forward, is that we want this to be a better project as a result of it, and to continue to work together and try to find the right outcomes so that the entire neighborhood is better for it. I think that would be what my hope is. And with that, I'm going to make the motion. Unless there's any other discussion, I'd like to make the motion to the recommended action from staff, which would be to deny the appeal and approve the requested conditional use permit and subject to the findings and conditions identified in the staff report, in addition to the 2 conditions that we added to it regarding.
Yes. Do you want a slightly more specific one for the design of the wall, rather than, I had kind of given a rough idea.
You gave it directional.
I was comfortable with neighborhood, compatible with the neighborhood. I think that also is not a unusual.
No, and that would be in
metric
addition
for
to mitigation measure NOI-1.
I would second that motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you. Thanks to everyone. All right, that brings us to item 22, which is TEF for public hearing and consideration of Resolution 17-69, approving a joint exercise of powers agreement related to the California Municipal Finance Authority and approving the issuance of private activity bonds for the Lighthouse Charter School project. The city manager is requesting that we open and continue the public hearing. So we're going to open the public hearing on item 22. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Blumberg? Do we still have private activity bonds at this hour?
There is the potential that private activity bonds would no longer be allowed in the future under the current tax reform bill that Congress is considering. Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, so without objection, then we'll continue the public hearing to January 17th at the hour of 7:30 p.m. or as soon as possible thereafter. Seeing no objection, that will be the order. Item 23 is a workshop on the downtown Riverfront streetcar station design. Mr. McCoy.
Mr. Mayor and members of council, Jason McCoy, the item before you is a brief update on the downtown Riverfront streetcar project, as well as a presentation on the framework of the station design. The intent of bringing this to you is to, one, provide a brief update. The second is to inform the council of our intent to go out to the community in order to gain additional input on the station design and the framework that's presented to you today. We're looking to receive input from the council, as well as authorization to use this framework as we move forward with the station design plan. Before you is a brief PowerPoint that I will run through. So as far as the status update goes, we are still looking to pursue a spring 2018 date for obtaining our Small Starts grant agreement from the FTA. That is absolutely predicated on one of four, or all of four items here that I have listed: approval of the governance structure and documentation by the FTA, completion of the FTA risk assessment and subsequent risk assessment report that is prepared by the FTA with favorable results. We are looking to obtain all of our utility relocation agreements by all the affected utility companies in January. And we also are looking to obtain our remaining $3 million in local funds that were previously committed by Sacramento County. All of these things are absolutely in a critical path in order for us to obtain the SSGA. If any of these are not completed, they may or may not impact the cost and schedule of the project. We do have contingency built in, and we do have additional 6-month fluff that's built into our schedule for the streetcar project. So depending on how quickly these items move forward will depend on where we're at with our schedule. And I'll definitely be providing additional updates to the council in the future. The staff report outlines all these remaining items that are listed in the PowerPoint presentation. We are at 85% engineering design. We did hold the first Riverfront JPA meeting jointly with the Policy Steering Committee, and we are also currently undergoing technical review of the streetcar vehicle proposals or proposal that have been delivered to RT. I'm not completely aware at this point how many are delivered to RT, so once that technical review goes through, then I can provide additional information to council. So regarding the station design framework, from the engineering plan, from the 85% design, we did locate where these stations were, that we did that process early on. That also involved communicating with property owners, business owners in the area. We'll continue to do that as we start refining these stations. As far as the framework goes, the project management team identified early on that, along with consultation of property owners, particularly in the Bridge District, that there needs to be consideration for 3 different types of stations. One, a destination station, one that is going to be an iconic station, so to speak. Another would be having the B station or a community station, which would have fewer amenities necessarily than the iconic stations, but would definitely still be something that's going to be an attraction for additional passengers over what we'd see as a neighborhood station or a local station, where there would be the fewest number of amenities provided in there, mostly because of the lack of room or the function and operation of that station itself. The map before you shows the entire streetcar system, but I have actually highlighted the 6 station locations. There are a total of 11 platforms in these 6 station locations. So there's a total of 6 on Riverfront Street, 4 on Tower Bridge Gateway, and then on West Capitol, we have the central station that's in front of City Hall that consists of 1 platform with dual track on either side. What I have here I'm just going to run through these very quickly. These are massings that our designers have put together in order to allow us to continue to communicate with property owners, businesses, residents, in order to show them how these stations are formed and what kind of amenities and design we'd be looking to include in this. So this is an example of the Type A station, the Civic Center. All of our stations are going to have 4 basic structures. There's going to be a communications cabinet. There has to be an electric service pedestal. There has to be some kind of sign, icon, pylon, something that identifies that it is actually a streetcar station. And in some case, we're going to have a vending machine in every case. In some cases, you'll see a shelter, and those would be in the A or B style stations. So this, I'm going to run through these. We did this with every station platform in West Sacramento, both northbound and southbound on Riverfront Street, eastbound, westbound on Tower Bridge Gateway, and for the central station in front of City Hall. We took this framework to the TMI Commission and received input from the commissioners on what it is they would like to see more of in the framework. We did get some specific recommendations, and one was consider the westbound Tower Bridge Gateway and 3rd Street station as more of an iconic station. That would be the first station that you would get to on a westbound approach. This has also been recognized by the Economic Development Department, who are looking into potential property acquisition into the Capitol Yards area in order to make that more of an iconic station across from Rayleigh Field. I'm definitely here to answer any questions you might have, and we're going to continue to engage the city council in this process as we move forward with talking to business and property owners.
Mr. Johannesson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this, Jason. So on the design, aesthetics, I think, are going to be really important in the Bridge District based on what we're doing in public art and the development that's going there. Have you run by the designs with property owners, particularly Fulcrum?
So we did have one initial meeting with the Fulcrum property owners. That's how we started to come up with this initial framework. Some of the comments we received was that in the areas of the barn, for instance, it would definitely be more appropriate to have some additional public art. That's right now currently identified as a B level or community station, where we could have enhanced opportunities for public art, for art integrated into the shelters, et cetera. Directly across from that are where some of the new residences have been constructed and are being constructed. And it was actually expressed to us that they would like to see a more minimal station so that there's not a lot of extraneous loitering, for instance, in front of these areas. There's a lot less room for putting additional amenities in their public art. There's always opportunities for expanding a station or integrating some little details here and there, but this basic framework it creates a setting for us to actually engage in dialogue with everybody, and then pretty much sets a starting point, and from there we'll start figuring out exactly how much room we have and what it is that residences and property owners want to see.
Yeah, that's great. I think the other issue is just the shelter aspect of it, because there is going to be wind in that area. People are going to be using it to commute. You've got to have a place where people can actually get out of the rain, because it will rain. So I'm glad you're looking at the aesthetics of this. I think these particular types of stations they're very minimal. All the different permutations are, but there are design, I think, elements that would really help it fit into that area.
Ms. Andine.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for your work on this. It looks like, to me, the planning's going forward really well, and it's very thoughtful in terms of thinking that all the stations aren't exactly the same, because they don't have necessarily the same need. Streetcars, because it will be operating pretty regularly, I don't think it needs to be like a full-on train station or, where you need a lot of time, because hopefully you're moving along and it's coming and going pretty quickly. So I think there's probably some shelter from sun for us in the summer and, rain in the winter. But for me, I think the simplicity and safety of the stations is really important. And then, of course, when you can add aesthetics or, something interesting or iconic for us, especially in those couple of stations. But I think that's all in here. But again, for me, it's just, I don't think the stations have to be as substantial as when you're waiting for an hour for something, because I think the time between these 20 minutes, is that the 15, 20, something, like that's the expectation?
It's, so along Riverfront Street and in front of City Hall, we're looking at 30-minute headways,
30,
but in
okay.
Raley Field itself is going to be 15-minute headways.
Okay. 'Cause I do think that adds to what the needs are for the stations, which I know is being considered.
And you made an important point about the safety. We are going to be bringing in the police department and the fire department in on this in the overall design process.
So the distinctions with the southbound on the Riverfront Street, those are principally based on the space that's available on the southbound side of Riverfront Street, or?
For the southbound side in front of what's currently the developing Fulcrum properties, the size of those stations that are in the development area is pretty much dictated by one interest by the property owners in having a less grand station and something that would fit more in with the residences that are being planned. The other is that there really isn't physically as much room, but that, as I said, it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be opportunities for us to find ways to fit things in.
Is that true for the Ballpark Drive?
No, it is not. No, that was simply a way for us to fit it into the character. It was just an assumption that we made as a starting point.
Okay. Okay, it makes sense. At first when I read it, it seemed like especially when you took into account the Tower Bridge Gateway east-west distinction at 3rd Street, that that all the cool stations were things that were taking you towards Sacramento, right? Both in terms of the at Tower Bridge Gateway and on Riverfront, right? It's like as though the directionality is running to the north, which it does right now, all right? But we're building a system, or at least laying the groundwork for a system in which we might really want to get people. I mean, Pioneer Bluffs might be the destination, right? So using the site conditions to determine, I think, makes sense. But I wouldn't build, especially because we're not going to be providing revenue service next year, and things like Shell will be done by the time we're actually running trains and all of that. That we should be anticipating that's going to be. We will have an interest, if not, in directing our mobility attention, not just as a way to get to the bridge and over, but also destinations over that are here but don't yet exist. So,
Yeah.
Okay. This is a workshop only, right? So, any other questions or comments? And 3 of us were at the streetcar policy steering committee, right?
Yeah, 3 of us were.
So.
If I have just one comment, and I agree with what you were saying, because I was going to bring up the fact on this.
We were there too. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
It's okay. The destination part is absolutely, to me, kind of what popped out is, I didn't kind of see it as a pattern of going to Sacramento. I didn't get that paranoid. But I did see what popped out to me was making sure that we anticipated destinations and I understand this is clearly the launch pad of the discussion. And I think there's this tremendous opportunity when you start thinking about that every neighborhood would have their opportunity to sort of be a landing spot for somebody. And what would your first welcoming message be, right? So that's why I think that when you think about Tower Bridge Gateway, when you think about down the barn, it kind of comes natural, but it's the places that aren't quite there yet, right? That are maybe envisioned that we have to anticipate. The other part too was, and I think you're there because you're kind of putting out the massing and what it might look like and the basic structures. But part of me thinks that every neighborhood, as we move forward, set the precedent that every one of these destinations or neighborhood, while there's a unifying theme amongst them, either by structure or by I'm not quite sure that what we use.
Maybe I could jump in. There has been discussion about that because we are dealing with 2 jurisdictions. So one of the things that we emphasized early was that these stations cross-jurisdictionally have to be recognizable throughout the system.
Yeah.
So you can't necessarily have a station that doesn't look anything like any of the other stations. So there must be some identifying structure elements that are integrated. And that could be color, structure, it could be materials that are used, all of which would be they could be varied by community area or by neighborhood, but they would still be recognizable as a system as a whole.
Yeah, because I think that's what I was getting to when we start talking to businesses and neighbors, and this should be a we conversation, right? It's kind of it is that. So while I can see the unifying theme because it is the system, but every stop should be representative of what we are arriving, right? So whether it's in the Bridge District at the barn, or in our Civic Center here in front of the City Hall, or whether it's at Tower Bridge Gateway, or maybe when it gets to Washington neighborhood too, it should be neighborhood centric, because you're not the same thing on the exact side when you hit the Handle District or you hit downtown Commons, whatever the manufactured acronym they're using down there is, but they're going to have that, right? And they should, because that's where you go. And when I've used public transportation, whether in Paris or wherever, you're always going to, certain districts. Whether in Washington you're going to Capitol Hill, it's just, and you're there, and that's not quite the example I'm looking for, the stations, or certainly but it should be, we should be thinking about that too. How do you incorporate the neighborhood theme along with the unifying theme of the streetcar system? So that's all I had. Thank you. This is good work.
So just one more comment. The barn stop, I think we had this debate over parking too. And it can be tempting to ask the master developer to treat the master developer as the proxy for the area. And I would strongly urge you to not do that. So get Fulcrum's point of view. Fulcrum doesn't speak for the neighbors necessarily. And also the neighbors don't speak for the land use plan that we've adopted. And that is the vision that the whole city has invested in that district. So that the Bridge District in particular, as a whole, is created as a high-density transit-oriented development. And so we need to be careful not to, the first movers in any part of the city always have raised concerns about the next movers and wanting to protect the kind of the bucolic, quiet, semi-rural lifestyle. And the neighbors, I live there, they're no different, right? So, but the land use plan and the mobility plan depend on embracing transit and biking and walking and other non-vehicular modes. And so I want to be careful that we don't start to give a nod to the notion of, okay, we want a little transit, but we don't want to look like too much transit, or we want to draw people that ride transit to there, because that's the whole point of that district. And so we should be asking Fulcrum for its opinion about Fulcrum. Ask neighbors about their opinion about the neighbors, and then remember very clearly what is in the master plan for the Bridge District and all the grants that we have received, all the conditions that are in those grants as well. Because what we have promised to deliver is that urban transit and walking and biking oriented district. So this is great. This was the right. We got all the right answers, but just as we're going forward to think about that emerging place, that it's both the developer, the people, and posterity that we've all been planning for, including all the residents of the city that are investing there. All right, anything else?
Thank you very much.
Direction. Thanks, Jason. All right, that brings us to item 24, which is a workshop on potential approaches to developing a smart city strategy and request for authority to negotiate with the Smart Cities Council for a Smart City Readiness Workshop and Summary Recommendations Document. Mr. Robinson.
Good evening. The purpose of this item is to facilitate a council discussion on a preferred approach for developing a smart cities implementation plan. I'd like to provide a quick background and describe staff's recommendation before returning it back to the mayor to lead the council's discussion. Definitions of smart cities vary across different organizations, but generally they all refer to cities that optimize the use of information and communication technology to deliver better services to the community. And I would add innovative management practices to that as well. The council signaled its commitment to the principle of smart cities by including a smart city component in Measure E and by having a smart city implementation piece in your 2017 strategic plan. The city already has many smart activities in place now, ranging from the police's use of predictive analytics to the sentiment analysis software that was adopted last month and that we're working with Zensity on. Smart meters, there's a number of different ones. So really this is about enhancing and systematizing the adoption of those kinds of technologies and techniques rather than introducing them as a brand new concept to the city. These activities, and along with the other smart products that are to come, will help the city deliver better services and respond to future budget challenges by doing more with less. The range of possible smart improvements, though, is vast, and it includes disparate areas such as government transparency, traffic management, energy efficiency, outdoor lighting, law enforcement, and more. So the most respected smart cities, including New York and Vienna and London and many others, one of the unifying factors among all of those is that they tend to have a plan. They have some kind of framework within which they adopt those technologies. And we think that would be the approach to use in West Sacramento as well. There's multiple approaches to developing that kind of plan. They all have pluses and minuses. For one, staff could develop that and propose it to the council. The benefit of that is it would be the least expensive approach and the fastest, but it would not benefit from direct experience with world-class smart projects that are going on worldwide. So we think that the best approach would be one that does involve that kind of expertise being brought in. That can also be done in a nominally free way by working with a large vendor who will come, and there's various ones who will agree to come and work with jurisdictions to develop plans. But usually there's some kind of either implicit or explicit quid pro quo there in terms of using that technology when you do adopt your plan, and that may or may not be in the city's interests. We could hire a consultant. That's another way to get that kind of expertise, but in our estimation, that would be both expensive and time-consuming. So the approach that we're recommending is kind of a hybrid approach where we would bring in an outside group to bring in some expertise and help us think around these ideas, but then have that work product be incorporated by staff into a plan that would include local elements as well. So the entity that we would recommend working with is the Smart Cities Council. That is an industry group, so it's comprised of companies that work in the smart city space. And their purpose overtly is to increase the market for those kinds of technologies. But they conduct events worldwide. Staff has been to several of them. I think members of the council have as well. And they really do seem to put forward an educational and company agnostic curriculum at those events, so we think that they could do that in a customized event for us. So what we're recommending is that the city contract with the Smart Cities Council to come and do a 1 or even a day and a half event here, a workshop that would incorporate elected officials, appointed officials, stakeholders, residents, business people, and bring in those experts to talk about what the city ought to be working in, where the gaps are, what areas of the smart city effort would be the city's priorities, and then to prepare a summary report after that event, and then that work product would become the basis for staff to work with the council to develop an actual plan that we would recommend for the council to adopt at a later time. And since the Smart Cities Council, their approach to smart cities really does focus a lot on technology, the piece that staff would probably add to that are some of the management strategies and some of the fiscal elements that would be really local to customize that to West Sacramento's needs. So if authorized by the council, we could begin negotiating with the Smart Cities Council immediately with the intent to implement a readiness workshop in March and have a strategy document for the council as soon as possible after that, but ideally by like June of next year. So that's our recommendation. That's the end of my presentation.
All right, Mr. Johannesson.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, John. So I hope the goal of all this is to come up with some type of policy framework that we can use, similar to what we did with the age-friendly, and you have basically a list of goals that you look at for every project that comes through. Does this fit into this particular goal, or how can we implement those kind of plans? Because in the end, if we do come up with a smart city framework, we're going to want to make sure it's implemented. But I think it makes sense to at the initial part of this project to maybe have council chime in on what that framework looks like, rather than going out to the general public. I think there's a place for that, but I think it's really up to us to see why we're doing this and what are the main goals that we're trying to achieve, and come up to kind of a general idea of a framework. And I'm not sure how this consultant works, but I would envision that there would be several different iterations of whatever the plan is, and there would be points where the council would chime in, the public would chime in. So it becomes more of an organic document, as opposed to a consultant coming in and saying, well, gee, this is what they do in New York, and how does this fit you? It's more something that we come up with our goals and aspirations and why we want to do this. Right. So you have more of an organic kind of development. And because there's a number of different things, I think you're right in terms of how tech is driving this, and tech is a part of what we're trying to do. But if we, for example, hired Samsung to come in and do a smart city analysis, or Robert Bosch, who's really big on that right now, they're going to come in and sell their stuff, and that's really what the goal is. And I think you're right to keep it agnostic, device agnostic, or even look at open data, how that integrates into all this, how identifying at some point infrastructure needs, because a lot of this technology depends on information communication capability, in all parts of town, depending on how it's going to interact with the public. So maybe just to kind of at the get-go, kind of get more of a points list that this would be, what the plan should include, with at least discussion topics. I think at least at the council level, so we all have a chance to kind of chime in, to kind of get it from top level, and then kind of fill in the gaps down there.
Okay. Ms. Sandine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would concur with Mr. Johannessen's suggestions. I think this actually gives us a chance to also, the framework you've presented gives us a chance to make this a West Sacramentan smart city. We could then become the kind of model for others like we do in so many other areas. So I think it sounds like it's almost SWOT analysis-esque, the start at least, a little bit. And I do think that that's a good approach. I also appreciate the time frame that you've put forward, March, and then having something come back by June, because we could do planning for 2 years, and then we're not smart, we're dumb, because we've missed the ability to move things forward quickly, or more quickly. So I think this looks strong to me, and again, I know that we have 2 experts already on the council, so I think we'll be leaning on them heavily as this is moving forward.
This is great. I'm sorry. No, this is great. I say proceed and getting outside voices to kind of, sometimes you get stuck in an echo chamber of yourself and thinking we have all the answers, but if you think this would be the best fit for us to kind of get the most out of what we want to achieve on smart cities, then we should pursue that.
Right, well, I concur. I really want to underscore what Mr. Johannessen said. I really agree about the way we handle the process and all that. I think this is the right strategy. This area, it's so potentially expansive. I think we want to be careful to not develop a strict plan of what we intend to do, like down to the semicolons. That's not where West Sacramento is at its best. I mean, given that we don't have resources to do much of anything, it's having a general, having a fuzzy framework. Here are things that we would like to do. Here are goals that we think. Here are things that are interesting to us that we might want to take a look at. Okay, and that's 20% of this work. But it's very important, and it's 20% of the work that should happen the way that Mr. Johannessen was talking about. The other 80% is, well, maybe of the other 80%, it's partly giving our own team, your colleagues and the police and fire chiefs and the public works staff, whatever, getting them trained for how to see these opportunities and assess them and incorporate them and integrate them themselves. As part of their daily work, not just as part of the Measure E special allocation. And then the rest of it, whatever percentage is left, which hopefully is a lot, should be how are we going to pay for it, or how are we going to actually do it, which is a combination of what funding strategies are out there and what leveraging and partnership and strategies are out there. Because if at the end all we have is a plan of, it would be great if we did inductive charging in all the roads and we did this and we did that and we don't know how to do it. All we've done is created a bunch of work for ourselves that we cannot do and infrastructure that we cannot build and can't deliver. So if we had the plan, half right, but we're able to do it because we've really focused on, well, okay, are there grants out there? Are there once we've figured out that we want to really focus on sensing technologies that connect police and public works and parks and the school district or whatever it is, and we've identified, this process has helped us to identify 3 companies that are great at that, and 2 of them are looking for, right now, happen to be looking for city partners, and they'll cover all the costs, kind of like we did with Zen City. Right? Those things would be as important, especially with an industry-based council, those sorts of things would be at least as valuable as the plan itself. But you can't do those things without a plan, right? So we do have to have some sense, like our general plan is, here's what we're trying to get to, here's what we want to accomplish, here's what we don't want to do. And then once we have that general sense, I think not spending a lot of time refining and writing and perfecting, but instead figuring out, okay, now that we've got that, how do we find the right opportunities and the right windows and the right leverage points to really deliver on it. The only thing I would say is, because it's an industry council, I think we have to pay particular attention to make sure that we're still open for business and looking to support startups and emergent smart city strategies that may not be Samsung, but might be the sorts of things that we've been trying to incubate both through STIR the Start Some Residence programs and other initiatives that we've been doing in our own community and in the region. So the Smart Cities Council, I know, invites startups and what have you, but it's not one of the first investments that a startup makes is to join the Smart Cities Council. So they're the right group to do this, but I think we need to keep an eye on this to make sure that we are keeping that door open and where possible, and being assertively inviting people, startups and others into the solution set for us too. So, but great work. All right. So staff has recommended, city manager's recommending that we authorize staff to negotiate with the council and bring back a report. Motion, Mr. Holm? So Mr. Johanneson's moved and Ms. Dean has seconded the staff recommendation. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to the council calendar. Ms. Berlin?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Just a reminder that from December 25th through January 1st, over the holiday break, our community center and city hall will be closed.
All right, any questions on the calendar? City manager report.
Kathleen O'Leary, a longtime city employee, she passed away last Saturday, and there'll be a funeral for her a week from Friday at 11 at Our Lady of Grace, and we'll put that in the newsletter so you have that with you. So on that sad note, on a more positive note, staff is working with Visit Sacramento on the New Year's Eve fireworks event. Our fire and police have always been engaged on that. This year, we're trying to work with the event sponsors to maximize the viewing opportunities from West Sacramento. Where's the right place to observe the fireworks at 9 o'clock? There's only one show this year. Maximize those opportunities so that from a traffic standpoint, we have good circulation. So we'll provide more details as we hammer that out.
All right, questions for the city manager? City attorney report? Staff direction from members of the council? We have no future agenda item requests, so Mayor Pro Tem Ledesma moves and Mr. Johannesson seconds. The meeting be adjourned. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.